Good evening, good afternoon, good morning in some parts of the world. And so my name is Montagan from UNESCO, and thank you very much, everyone.
You have to unmute, LK.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, good. I'm just going to start again. So sorry. สวัสดีค่ะ Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. And sometimes for some people, sorry, good night in some parts of the world as well. So thank you very much for joining today. My name is Montagan from UNESCO, and thank you everyone again for joining today. We decided to make this webinar in a more friendly way, which is like we see everybody's face. So please, can I ask for your cooperation? If you do not wish to speak, please make sure that your microphone is mute so that our co-facilitators, Vanessa, Sharare, and Manantuna can speak in a smooth way. But if you would like to ask questions, please use the hand raising function, or you can just open your video and raise hand. If you cannot find the button, I will try to, I will flag you up and the facilitator will be able to call you up to speak. Okay, so without further ado, I would like to, first of all, invite our Chief of Culture Unit at UNESCO Bangkok, Dr. Feng Jing, to deliver a greeting speech. Dr. Feng, over to you, please. Please turn on your microphone.
Okay, so yeah, good afternoon and good evening to you all. Dear teachers, culture and education experts, dear colleagues, a very good day to you all. This is Feng Jing, Chief of Culture Unit of UNESCO Bangkok. It's just a few days when I joined UNESCO Bangkok, so I'm very happy to meet you all on the occasion of this webinar. It is really a great pleasure for me to join the first informative webinar for the online course, Bringing Living Heritage to the Classrooms in Asia Pacific. This is a product of a year-long hard work of the instructors, video editors, and colleagues from the 3 partner institutions, UNESCO, ICHCAP, and ICHCAP. This webinar and the course are parts of a larger initiative that bridges 2 core topics or mandates of UNESCO: intangible cultural heritage or living heritage and education. These are the 2 dimensions of our work are genuinely inseparable. I'm also very pleased to note that a large number of teachers and educators have taken the course on ICHCAP online campus, and many are here today at this webinar. Since all of you who are here have, to a certain extent, completed the online course, I can also tell you that the content of the course you just took also did not come out of thin air. It consolidates the experiences and the lessons learned from our project implementation, starting more than 10 years ago and more intensively over the last few years in the Asia and the Pacific region. The course also is aligned with the methodology that has been developed and used for decades at schools in Europe. This webinar, the online course, together with the resource kit that will soon be launched, are responses to requests from teachers around the Asia Pacific region who have voiced the need for more guidance and tools about this living heritage and education approach in our 2019 survey and consultation. Intangible cultural heritage is a vector of our identities. It conditions our way to understand our surrounding and to interact in our society. At the heart of ICH safeguarding is education, in particular through intergenerational transmission and interaction with the communities. Education for all and inclusive and equitable quality education are UNESCO's central educational goals and the pillars of Sustainable Development Goal 4. The concept of quality education encompasses respect of local cultures and engagement with local communities. The goal recognizes that for education to be of high quality, it requires motivated students and teachers, locally relevant curricula, learner-centered methodology, and inclusive, accessible environments. As you are aware, Target 4.7 specifically calls for the appreciation of cultural diversity and of culture's contribution to sustainable development. Therefore, by integrating living culture and education, we can develop a lively and relevant way of teaching. Teachers are offered the opportunity to be creative and innovative in preparing their lesson plans. Lessons become more dynamic, easier for students to relate to, hence easier to understand when they are enriched with anecdotes and expressions from the local cultures. At the same time, it also contributes to better awareness about the meaning and the values of living heritage, so it inspires young generations to learn more about it, to practice it, and transmit it to the future generations. You are here with us today because you believe in the power of bringing culture and education closer together. I hope that the course and this webinar will provide you with sufficient knowledge and skills to not only improve your classroom, but also inspire you to become our champions, to advocate for this new approach, and stay in touch with us every time you have something new to share. I would like to thank colleagues at ICHCAP for an extended partnership that makes this webinar possible. Thank you to our 3 experts and everyone who has been involved in this initiative and get us where we are today. Thank you once again to all of you for your commitment to work with us, and wishing you a wonderful time in taking the course. ICHCAP. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Feng Ching. And without further ado, I would like to invite Mr. Jisung Kim, Director General of ICHCAP, to give the opening remarks, please. Mr. Jisung, Mr. Kim.
Ladies and gentlemen, all participants, dear friends, good afternoon. Actually, good evening in Korea. Mr. Fang Jing, Director of Cultural Division, nice to see for the first time. Ms. Achilles, Ms. Montakan, and all colleagues, thank you for today. Welcome to the first online seminar of Bringing Living Heritage to the Classroom in Asia-Pacific MOOC. I'm very pleased that these MOOC courses are becoming popular among teachers in Asia-Pacific regions. Collaborated with the UNESCO Bangkok office and APSEU, ICHCAP started the ICH education projects since 2018 and developed this MOOC. Of course, without help of UNESCO regional offices, schools, and all stakeholders who participated for the pilot projects, this couldn't be possible to come out. With this chance, I express my sincere gratitude for all. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed how we think of ourselves, with growing concerns about whether we will ever return to our normal lives where we used to work, talk, exercise, eat, laugh, and have fun together. Education institutions were not an exception. However, we utilized this chance to launch this course and put our best efforts. The 2003 Convention and the operational directives emphasize the importance of education for implementing the Convention and achieving SDGs, particularly SDG 4, quality education. As a means, we thought that dissemination of sources through online will be more useful and it could maximize the results. This is the underline of MOOC development. After launching, statistics show the growing number of enrolling the classes. In this line, the three institutions that developed this MOOC agreed more promotion is needed for teachers and stakeholders to raise awareness in the sense of international discourse, such as linking ICH and education, implementing the 2003 Convention or Education for Sustainable Development. This is the reason why we are holding this seminar. Already noticed, the seminars will be held twice, focusing on South and Southeast Asian cases today, and the East Asian and Central Asian cases on 1st December. I expect that there will be in-depth, much discussion, and by inducing collective intelligence with countries' case studies, the MOOC could be updated and become more usable in Asia-Pacific region. The guidelines book, Learning with Intangible Heritage for a Sustainable, published by UNESCO Bangkok office, starts with a quote, "Education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world." Yes, I truly believe. And this is the reason why we are doing with the ability to lead the difference. When we have the more information we share, the stronger the power becomes. I wish for a fruitful and constructive discussion during the conference will be. Thank you and enjoy the seminars.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kim and Dr. Jing. So thank you very much for a very nice opening to this seminar. I would like to hand the floor over to Vanessa Achilles, who will start introducing you again. I know that you have already gone through extensively the online course, but we're just going to recap everything over again for you. So just to introduce the UNESCO project and many other things apart from this. So I'm handing over my floor to Vanessa, Shirali, and Mananduna. Please, Vanessa.
Hello, thank you very much, Elke, and hello, everyone. Hello, the directors. Thank you very much for these wonderful speeches. It's lovely to be here and to see we are now topping 91 participants. It's fantastic. I'm really, really happy to see so many people, and it's very exciting. So yes, as Elke mentioned, I am Vanessa, and I will facilitate this webinar. And before I go further, I would like to ask Sharare and Manantuna, who will co-facilitate with me, to say a little hello so that you can see their face. Hello, Manantuna? Yes.
Hi.
And,
hi, everyone.
yes. So you will see that we will alternate discussions. Sharare and Manantuna, we are very lucky to have them because they have been instrumental in the development of the pilot in Nepal, and they have a wealth of experience to share with us through examples. And I'm sure that many of you have seen some of these examples on the online course already, so you know what to expect. They are very exciting. So, well, thank you very much to all the teams who have been involved in ICHCAP, ICHCAP, and been, of course, in UNESCO. As Elke mentioned, this webinar is the result of a long process and a long work, which started back in 2019 with a series of pilot projects in 6 countries. And we have gathered all the lessons from these pilots to develop a number of resources for teachers. This was also building up on work in Europe, as Dr. Feng mentioned. And so you have hopefully already followed part of the online courses. There will be also an online guide coming. There are some cartoons, video animations that have been produced. If you have already followed the course, be informed that we have added some videos of testimonies on the course, so you may want to go back and watch them if you haven't done so. And then we have produced this course to help you develop, to really guide you through the process of developing your lessons with intangible heritage or about intangible heritage. And this is a process. It's not a one-size-fits-all process. This is the pedagogy and the methods that we thought the most useful, but of course it remains flexible. The key here is that it remains adapted to your context and to your needs and to the needs of the students that you're dealing with. So let me first ask you a question. You will see this question appearing online. This is a little bit of information for us. Could you please click on one of the answers? To which extent have you completed the online course so far? We understand that it's a time-consuming process. Some of you may be in the process of doing that. So please take a few seconds to just click on the most appropriate answers. Okay, all right. So answers are still coming in, but I think we get already a pretty good idea of the trend here. So let me show you the results. And apologies if some of you haven't had a chance yet, but it seems that a vast majority of the participants here have completed the whole course. So congratulations. We really hope you enjoyed it. Some of you haven't finished, you have watched some of the videos. Please be informed that this webinar is really a complement to the online course. It is not meant to be a full-fledged course. It would take much more than 3 hours to cover in details all the topics that are covered in the online course. This is really an opportunity for us to exchange and for you to ask questions. We hope that this session can be as dynamic as possible and that you will have the opportunity to maybe clarify some of the content that was already explained, covered in the course, but was not necessarily clear for you, or that you found gaps and you would like more clarification about that. So let's take that as the core concept of this workshop. It's really an exchange sessions. And we also hope that out of at least the 65 participants who have completed the course, some of you will be willing to share your ideas and your concept and the lessons you came up with the rest of the group, because I think this is through these exchanges that we really have rich discussion. So are there any questions at this stage on the process before we start and jump into the content? So I do not see any hands raised. So we will start our first consent session. Let me share my screen. So,
Vanessa, there is actually some question in the chat.
Okay.
Which
All
is like
right.
Diana.
Yes.
I have questions about teaching implementation. Wonder if we could spice up our program in the future because we might change our minds and develop a new idea along the way, like adding another lesson and activity that is not in our original document that has been handed into the course. We will have a letter of formal notice to implement the teaching, so it could be noticeable by school that we don't just do what we want, but make change, and other teachers, so that they may be able to take an interest in joining the program like this. Thank you for the question, Diana.
Yes, okay, thank you for your question. It's quite a long question, but if I understand correctly, you're asking about flexibility of the approach. And in this case, I mean, this is, as I mentioned, it's not a one-size-fits-all activity. And of course, you're welcome to revise your activities and to revise your ideas and to develop new lessons as they come. But maybe we will get back to this question after we have discussed the second component, which is about the steps themselves, if that's okay. But don't worry, we will get back to that. But our first content, and you have seen that in the module 1, is about what is living heritage and why is it important for schools. So, I can unfortunately do not see the, excuse me. So let me ask you once more. I am blocked. Apologies for that.
Would you like to launch the second poll?
Yes, I would like to launch the second poll. Is it possible? Okay, thank you very much. It will be easier, I think, because I have to exit otherwise.
The poll right now.
Okay, thank you very much. So that's quite important concept that is covered here, is why is intangible heritage also called living heritage? So please let us know your thoughts on that topic.
Wow, we seem to get a varying answers.
It is quite diverse, which is quite interesting. Living heritage is very diverse, and it's fine to have very diverse answers to this question.
Okay, a few more people.
Yes.
Yes.
About 2/3 of you have responded so far.
Yes. If you can't see the poll function, like it's supposed to be like popping up in your screen, like right in the middle of your screen, and you just click the answer. Thank you very much.
But I think we get a general idea here. And we can see that still a majority of people have answered that because it can evolve through time depending on the context of the people practicing it. And yes, that's very much what is encompassed in the concept of living. It's living. It means that it changes. It can adapt according to what people perceive as what is important for them in their own context. And yes, it is true that if it is not practiced, it disappears. there is a risk, and a lot of the practices, unfortunately, are already at risk of disappearance. And that's one of the major work of UNESCO, is to ensure the safeguarding of living heritage. And bringing living heritage to school in different ways, in different roles, is one way that we can use to contribute to raising awareness about the practice, making the children and students interested in some of the practice, making them more aware, more engaged. And by keeping them engaged, we keep them practicing, and therefore we safeguard it. And yes, it includes the practice of living human beings, but the cultural practices and belief. Okay, so let's go back to our content. But it's very good to see that many of you have already conscious of the core concept. These are very important for the rest of the course and for this activity. So when we talk about living heritage, as we mentioned, we talk about something that is practiced, that is dynamic and potentially changing over time. And it encompasses a number of practices of communities, including oral tradition, performing arts, social practices, knowledge and practices concerning nature and the universe, traditional craftsmanship, so knowledge about craftsmanship, but it can also be games and sports and other practices. And we are talking a lot about communities in this course, and it's a community in a quite broad sense, because when we talk about community, we talk about a group of people who feel connected to a specific living heritage. And this doesn't have to do with borders or geographic zones. People who have migrated to a country may keep their living practices and bring them with them. You can also have people in completely different part of the world who will share a similar practice, and we see a number of examples of that. For instance, in different celebrations, similar in different countries. These people consider that this heritage is part of their identity, of who they are. Communities in general transmit their living heritage to younger generation, and this transmission process is what contributes to the safeguarding. And very importantly, they decide if and how this ICH, this living heritage, should be safeguarded or should change, should be adapted. So the community are really at the core of it. And what is important to acknowledge and to realize is that all of you here, you are part of at least one or probably several communities. You're probably part of several groups of people, because you will have your practice, your traditions, your knowledge, your local knowledge. You will have some culinary tradition, family traditions, celebrations. So we are all part of some communities. And as I mentioned already, the core concept of safeguarding is to ensure that the communities keep practicing and transmitting their heritage in a way that is important and meaningful to them, including through education and through schools. In the opening speech, we heard that ICH contributes to SDG 4 on education, quality education, which is absolutely true. And that's one of our core objectives here, is to provide quality of education for all. ACH can also contribute to other SDGs, to many of them. In fact, it can be health, it can be living on land or living in life in the oceans. It can be on the relationships between people. It can be on the economic aspects. So there are many ways to see that ICH contributes to sustainable development. And in many of your schools, probably you have discussed already programs on education for sustainable development or global citizenship education. And we'll see that a little bit more at the end. But we consider that these are complementary approach to ICH. So it doesn't mean that you have to choose between either we do GCED or we do teaching with ICH. Because of this complementarity, teaching with ICH will allow you for instance, to look at various disciplines. Like you take one element and it will have many components, so you can look from various angles, and you can discover and compare practices from different communities, interconnections, and this will really foster appreciation of the diversity and respect of other. And these are key values of global citizenship education, for instance. You've seen in the course, this approach of bringing living heritage into school has many benefits for the students, for the teachers, and for the communities and the safeguarding of their heritage. And we'll have a discussion at the end of this presentation. Just would like to stop for a second on the concept of teaching about and teaching with living heritage, which is exemplified in the course in various ways. When we talk about teaching about, ICH is the subject of instruction. It's, for instance, learning a traditional dance or learning a traditional craft. And this is usually quite widespread, either through regular courses or through extracurricular activities. What is interesting if we have an approach of teaching about ICH is if we try to put emphasis not only on the practice itself, which is quite common, but also on the origin, the meaning, and the value of this practice for the communities. And then there is a little more innovative approach, which may be more innovative for some of you, but has already been intuitively applied by many teachers, which is teaching with living heritage, in which case living heritage becomes a pedagogic tool that helps to enrich the teaching and learning process. And you can apply that to pretty much every curriculum subject and school activities. And you have seen several examples. If you have followed the course, you can use living heritage, for instance, to learn about physics by using musical instruments and sound waves. You can use living heritage to learn about literature by looking at oral traditions and local poetry, etc. You can learn mathematics through living heritage by looking either at patterns or at sequences, or by doing problem-solving activities related to the building or the making of the crafts. So I think you have seen many examples, or you can see many examples if you haven't followed the course. And there is also a resources that gives you many entry points on and many ideas on how to connect different types of living heritage with different school subjects. We have had actually a number of questions about that, and how can you integrate living heritage in language courses, for instance. So this can be done in many ways by looking at text in the local languages, or by studying craft tradition and writing about that, either in the national language or in a foreign language if you're doing foreign language education. So I will now hand the floor to Sharare, yes, to give you an example.
Well, hello, everybody. Can you hear my voice? Vanessa, is my voice clear?
Yes,
We can hear you.
Speak louder a bit, please.
Speak louder. Can you hear me? Oh, is that better?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay. So hello, everybody. So I'm going to share this is one thing we wanted to start with. This was a lesson that Devraj Maharzan from Panga had designed. And actually, there's some people from Panga here today as well. So Devraj sir himself is a physical education teacher. So he teaches physical education. And he also is the principal of the school. It's a public school. And it's also, sort of a part of the Newa community that is from that locale where the school is located. So he sort of helps with a lot of organizing and is very keyed into the community. So he wanted to design a course where he teaches drill exercises. So marching and things like that. And then what he did was he replaced the marching exercise. Instead of using the same, what you see over here, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, he decided to replace it with a rhythm that's used in that locale during a particular festival from Panga. So from the Panga Jatra, it's called Teko Neko Gwang Gwang Gwang. And so what he did is he invited somebody from the community to come every day for 45 minutes and work with the kids, with the students. And so he integrates, so he was teaching with an ICH element, so a performing arts element. And as they kept working on it every day, they decided that they added the element of the chariot. So what happens is when you walk in that rhythm, you actually also carry the chariot. So then they actually built the chariot together. So, I mean, in relation to the question that was floated in the chat, this was not something that he anticipated doing. And over time, as he kept working on it with the people from the community, they all decided to add these extra elements onto the actual lesson. And could you go to the next slide? So that's just a brief introduction, and you can see the students here. So on the left, you see them playing the instruments. So the dime, that the rhythm Cheko Neko Gwang 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 is part of the rhythm that is being used in the instrument in the middle. That's a dime. And then on the top right side, you'll see the students practicing marching with the rhythm. And then on the bottom, you'll see them actually trying to make the chariot, and then they're carrying it and things like that. So can we go to the next slide, actually? Because then I'll go. And this was a part that we wanted to talk a little bit about. What are the benefits of this kind of, bringing the ICH element into the school? And wanted to highlight that the students are actually not from the Newa community. Most of them are from different parts of Nepal, and their parents are largely migrants. And so there's a huge disconnect between the students and largely the local communities. So they don't actually connect that much. So the students see these festivals happening around them, but they don't necessarily know all the stories behind it or what happens. They're not the ones that are organizing it and things like that. So it was very fascinating for Devraj Marzan to sort of invite the students to learn. And so in some ways, this was connecting the school with what they see around them, because their homes, they're usually renting in these locales themselves. And in terms of safeguarding, it allowed for the Newa community to reach out to new communities and sort of develop an appreciation for these traditions, for the way that it's living. I mean, it happens every year. And, in terms of contextualizing their learning, they're doing these drill exercises with carrying the chariots. So then you get this understanding that you need to work together as a team in order. Why are you synchronizing? Why does everybody need to walk at the same rhythm? It's because you're carrying something together. And if you're not in the same rhythm, it's not going to work. So this idea of collaboration, it really contextualizes the reason for these drills. And so you can see that in this way, each of these elements are being touched upon, right? So is it fun? It's hands-on engagement, problem-centered learning, and developing the student sense of identity is something that we'll talk about a little bit later in a quote that Devraj sir talks about. But each of these elements and, stimulating dialogue to enhance inclusion, tolerance, and mutual understanding was something that became really key to this lesson. So each of these elements was incorporated into the lesson. So over to you, Vanessa. Or do we want to open up, Vanessa, for questions now?
Yes, I'm back. Yes, we want to open up for questions. So we give you a few seconds to look at this list, and then I will stop sharing for a few minutes my screen so that we can actually have a proper face-to-face discussion. And it would be interesting if you can share with us, for instance, why you are interested in this approach and what are the benefits that you have experienced already or that you foresee and that you hope to get from such lessons or such activities. So they can be from this list or they can be others, please. It would be very interesting for us to hear about that. And of course, this will be a question and answer session. So if you have questions about this part, please let us know.
Right, to raise
So-
your hand, the button of the raising hand is in the reactions button, the one that looks like a smiley icon in your Zoom software. Just click in there and punch raise hand. So you can raise hand, or if you do not find that button in your Zoom software, you can just type in a chat or turn on your camera and microphone and said, I would like to speak. We will welcome that as well. So we have a few questions already in the chat.
So let me have a look at the chat.
Not yet, sorry.
No,
Oh,
I see
alarm.
some hello and hello to
That's a
everyone.
lot of
Yes,
hello
indeed.
everybody.
But let's try to have different types of questions.
Yes.
It would be great if people would share some reflections, like some things from the list. I mean, do you have examples from when you have either run a lesson or when you were designing the lesson, things that came to your mind when you were doing the lesson? It'd be really great to hear from some experiences.
Exactly. We would
Oh,
love
your
to hear. Yes.
your personal objectives too, of course, like what your expectations.
The floor is open for everyone, please. We see a lot of face. There are many people are turning on the camera. If you, but I haven't seen the hand raising yet. I'm just putting it
I see
in the gallery.
first one.
Oh, we found Mr. Pongsathorn.
Hello,
Wow.
hello everyone. I'm Pongsathorn from Thailand. For me,
Yes.
I'm a Thai teacher at international school, so this one is really related to us. We teach both Thai students and non-Thai students. Especially for non-Thai, we have a curriculum. We teach both Thai and culture. So we believe that they can learn about ICS and then they can practice about the ICS. For example, we learn about festival, Songkran festival. We learn about Thai art. Then study about the Thai art there, and then they have a project to create or maybe and to promote, to research about the Thai art. For non-Thai students, they learn language and they also learn about the culture. So we have about the Thai game for them to play. This is some example that we did in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm sure that is very exciting for the student. And
That's very exciting. Sounds really good indeed.
yes.
Okay, the second person is Mr. Nilay Ray. Please, sir, please turn on your microphone. Mr. Nilay, you can speak now.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Namaskar, I am Nilay Rai from Shantiniketan, West Bengal, India. And I'm an assistant lecturer of Vishwabharati, a central university and an institution of national importance, and founded by Nobel laureate in the first Nobel laureate in Asia Pacific, the Rabindranath Tagore. And I deal in the age group of students from 6 to 22 years. And I teach language, especially the Bengali language and literature also. And we have a cultural atmosphere in our university system, and it is an integrated part of our education system here. We observe several occasions and festivals here in our home. And doing this, the students from when they are grooming, they are actually see the nature, they see their cultural heritage, and they observed it. And when I see your or actually this type of opportunities for us, you conducted the online course, then I am very much interested. And being a teacher of a part of the Central University, and I deal with a huge range of students. Can you help me? How can we accelerated or ICH in our teaching learning process? There are so many videos and the worksheet like that, and you plan to prepare a lesson plan and submit it by 31st December. It's very nice, but I sincerely ask you, this type of institutional practices, UNESCO or the system concerned, how they help us to run this type of activity. Okay, thank you, ma'am.
So you're asking about the potential support from UNESCO, is that to make this?
No, actually, there is actually, if I want to establish a nodal office here or a regional office here to establish with the help of or with the support of UNESCO Bangkok or like this, and we will develop a community. That means the students, teachers, and it is increasing day by day by practicing this. Their not only their teaching learning process, I think they practices their day-to-day life also.
Mm-hmm.
Is it possible? How can we do this? Please.
Well, I would say that first of all, what UNESCO is providing here is material to support capacity building. And that's and we also provide materials to help advocacy. So if you look at some of the animation videos that are listed as references, or in the upcoming guide that will come very soon, I'm not sure when it is finalized, but it is in the process of being published. There are special sections, for instance, on how to approach policymakers, how to work with school directors, for instance, because we think that this advocacy is very important to convince the different partners, the different people who are in the chain of the education process. So I would suggest, for instance, that you consult these documents as one option, because it will give you some areas for reflection. Then if you have an idea for a specific project in your school, there may be different types of network that you can approach that could be useful. For instance, UNESCO is running the ASP.NET, the network of associated schools. I'm not sure if your school is part of that or not, but it maybe could become one of them. And we are trying to work.
Sorry, ma'am.
Yes.
Just I interrupt you. Actually, I am eagerly waiting to and actually associated with the UNESCO's network school group. How is it possible? But how can we do this?
I cannot give you a short answer to this question. We can direct you to documents, because it's a process, and it's a global network. It would take too long to explain you, but we can put the link in the chat later on.
I'll put the link in the chat as well as in the email afterward. Yes. Like after the webinar, I'll send the email with like summarizing some of the answers to your questions posed in the floor, including the channel to connect to the ASP network, which is like another unit in UNESCO. So I will be able to provide like a contact point for you in that particular email as well.
But UNESCO may not be the only avenue. You may look at your local network that can also support this kind of initiatives. You may approach your local, provincial, or national or regional. I don't know the structure of the education system in India. The coordinator for your education and propose a project or an activity and liaise with other schools, liaise with other teachers, starting with other teachers in your school, maybe. So there are many ways that you can approach it. I would say from our experience, snowballing is best. You start a little bit and you show your results and you motivate people to follow suit and support your initiatives.
Okay.
Thank you. We
So
also
Thank you.
yes, we
Mr.
have a few
Nixon?
more people
Yes,
next. Thank
and
you
then
very
we
much,
will.
Mr. Nilay, and Mr. Nilay Ray. I will put like your like extensive answers to that question in the email afterward as well. So next, Mr. Nixon Guerrero, and after Mr. Nixon is Miss Andy Wang. So Mr. Nixon, would you like to take the floor to ask the question? Please unmute yourself.
Good evening, everyone. So I'm a master teacher from Bagao, Cagayan Valley, Philippines. Public school teacher. I just want to add something about this initiative. I think this initiative, Living Heritage, is such a enjoyable, fun activity for learners in our country. Lots of activities being hosted.
Mr. Guerrero, we cannot hear any. It's very noisy.
Can you try to speak again, please? Thank you. There was some noise from other participants. Can you repeat your previous sentence again, please?
As I said a while ago, these activities, this initiative of the UNESCO Club Philippines, UNESCO Club Living Heritage is such interesting, fun, enjoyable activities for our learners, since in our country there are the pupils or learners have different enjoy different games, activities, sports, and musics from within their culture and in the culture and in their communities. Though there are diverse culture, but our learners here are understand and enjoy the activities or the musics, the games, and other other related what should I say that other activities that make them enjoy. And so if we are going to include this in the module or in the daily teaching our students, it will be very fun and they will learn much, since the activities are within their gaps or within their reach. Ma'am, that's all, ma'am.
Okay, thank you for your intervention. You didn't have any question, right? It was a testimony.
To share the experience, yes.
Thank you very much for sharing this with us.
It's fun. Thank you.
Yeah, but UNESCO clubs are actually an interesting networks to go with if they exist in your country. Yeah.
Exactly. So next, I would like to invite Miss Andy Wang, please.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, I'm Andy Wang, and I am now a Chinese teacher in the area of Shanghai, China. And I am working in an international bilingual school. And my question, I think, have been partly answered and put forward and answered by the formal people. My first answer is like Diana's, because you only require us to submit our teaching plan paper, but I think it's a good opportunity to conduct and implement this project in our school. So a few days ago, I communicated with my principal, and she also supported me to conduct this program in our school. But I think we need some formal documents like certificates, not only for me, but only for the school, and to show that we are in cooperation with UNESCO to involve more parents, families, and students in our program. And that is the first question. If we conduct the project, shall we receive a certificate or some formal documents from the UNESCO to prove that we have done the things, we have finished the project? And secondly, if other teachers also want to join us, will they receive the same certificate as a participant? Because I think the documents is very important for us to let more teachers and more families to get involved. That's the first question I want to ask. And the second question, I think, is the same as another teacher in the Zoom, because in Shanghai there are many heritages, cultural heritages, which features our local, have some local features, but they are not listed in the UNESCO international cultural heritage, but they are also very they're very valuable. So may I use this as resources to develop my own teaching plan, for example, from the local villages in Shanghai, but they're not so famous. And they are not listed, but just the culture from the villages and from local people. Is that a useful resource to involved in my project?
Okay, let me answer the last question first.
Yes, and I'll answer the first question later.
Yes, absolutely. The culture and practices of the people around in the villages around your school, of the students in your school, of the teachers in your school is the most valuable resources that you can use for this kind of program. The lists are just a infinite fraction of the ICH that exist, whether we are talking about the UNESCO list or the national list. They are just a very, very small portion of what exists.
Yeah.
And please, it's very important that you can use this. The positive aspects of these is that usually there is documentation and that teachers can build upon this documentation. They already have some sort of information that they can use. So that's the positive aspect. But if you really want to engage your students, you have to use examples. I mean, it's better to use examples that they are familiar with. And the most familiar examples, the examples they are most familiar with are the ones they are practicing themselves. And that will not be the very special dance that only 0.5% of the population who are super masters are practicing. It's the wedding ceremony, the New Year ceremony, the local festivals, the local culinary practices, the local sports that they do in their free time. That's what they know. So these are very, very valuable resources.
Okay,
and they
thank
should
you. I
not
understand.
be, they should not be overlooked. And it's easy to find information because they are here. They tell you what they are doing.
Yes. We have different like this. Yeah. Please go on.
And to answer your first question, which I'm pretty sure is like questions of many people, like, thank you very much for your enthusiasm. Like within the span of this particular project that is kindly funded by the ICHCAP, we focus on like spreading words about this particular online course for teachers to be able to attend this course, as many as possible. But at the same time, we also invite you voluntarily to submit the lesson plan. For example, like Ms. Wang, you would like to submit the lesson plan, which is like I'm very excited to read it. And so you can do so. You can submit, you can send us, like share with us your lesson plan that you have designed. And we will have like a panel of experts that would be reviewing and giving you some of the comments for improvement or some questions or some kind of reflection of how it can be really implemented. And from that, I think like UNESCO project, we normally just decide on sites and everything by seeing the potential at the local level, and you're showing us the potential. And we'll be able to try to find a way that we can support you, if not directly, indirectly, by means of recognizing you or acknowledging you by some sort of documents as you want. And this can actually be carried on as a kind of future project together, or a kind of project that you do it by yourself at your school, but it could be recognized either by UNESCO in Beijing or UNESCO at the global level. Depends on how we'll be able to fit you into our mandate. So please, don't stop contributing, don't stop developing your thing, and keep sharing with us so we can see which of the projects that we currently have or will have in the future will be able to fit to support you. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I feel like we're creating a project together.
We should.
So
Yes.
I think, thank you very much for raising your hands. I think we will move on to the next session because some of the questions are already related. I saw from the chat, I just want to clarify a couple of things that I've seen going through. Someone was talking about tangible heritage, and someone was talking about geography and history. So are these ICH? So let me just clarify one thing. In your area, you may have a site, a monument, a famous building, a famous place, etc. This is tangible. It's something that you can touch. The building itself or the place itself is not living heritage, but still it's a very interesting starting point usually because you can see it, you can go there, you can do things around that. In many of these places, not always, but often, these places are associated with some sort of living heritage, either because they have been constructed with special techniques, and then you have the knowledge about the local crafts, for instance, or because these buildings serve a certain purpose. There may be events taking place there, and these are living practices. So it's not because it's a building that you should not consider it. And there are many aspects to that, but just understand the fact that there is the physical structure is one thing, and then there is all the practices associated with the building or the place or the site. And it's perfectly fine to have a field trip to a place and talk about this place, what it is, the history of this place, and also talk about what has happened in this place and how it is used, how it was used in the past, how it is used now. So that's how you associate living practices with a site. Someone is asking, is geography or is history living heritage? It's a trick question because geography as a subject is not living heritage, but there are many things related to geography that can be living heritage. You can have the knowledge about, like, you can look at ecosystem. You will have different ecosystems, and the knowledge associated with this ecosystem and of the environment, the knowledge is living heritage. That you know the cycle of different plants or different animals or things like that. This is living heritage, and it's associated with a topic which is geography. Looking at a map is not living heritage, but things can be related if they are connected to a practice or to local knowledge. Same with history per se. History is not living heritage. It's history, and living heritage is moving, is evolving over time. But you can definitely look at a practice in the past and now and how it could evolve in the future. So there is an historical element, and you look at this practice as a living element, keeping in mind that it's not because in the past it was different that it was better, and it can evolve. Someone was also asking about that. Yes, it can evolve. It doesn't need to evolve. It evolves if the community practicing it thinks it's important that it evolves. And if they prefer doing a festival a different way for whatever reason that they have. So just to answer in short, history and geography are not living heritage, but there are many elements that are connected to living heritage.
Also, like the example that we were just sharing just before, with people carrying the chariot. So the chariot gets carried around the community's location, and it goes from location to location. So that exercise could have easily been incorporated into a mapping exercise as well. So it could have been, it could have been multidisciplinary that way. So that's an example of teaching with intangible culture heritage, and you could be mapping and using skills around mapping. So then it could lead to skills that would be related to geography. And then it could also be like, maybe that practice, that particular rhythm, maybe it's, maybe it sounds different in different locations. Maybe all the way down the river, maybe different people practice it in different ways. So there's so many ways that you could integrate those subjects into and using an ICH element to teach with those topics as well.
Exactly, or using the same basket and looking at like the same type of basket, and it looks different in different part of the countries or different buildings. Like many things can be connected, and that's why I refer you to this document as a resource which gives you linkages and gives you many examples.
Right, thank you very much. Yes, I would invite Vanessa to talk to the next session on the 6 steps, and I see like some hand raising. Thank you very much. Please save your questions for the next Q&A that we have. So Vanessa,
we have first a very interesting perspective from a few people. You see the video? It's not running yet, but you see it?
Not yet. We see we see it. Please run it now.
Okay.
Regarding my experience and the benefits of using living heritage in schools, it helps to preserve and promote our culture, our local cultures and traditions. It connected to their own identities. It enhances the traditional knowledge and skill. It is best tools to celebrate our own culture, to bring harmony and cohesive to the classroom. It improves relationship with their schoolmates and community people. It teaches traditional approach to cope with grief and disparity. Especially, I teach traditional paintings of a festival. It's named as Cow Festival. It is it's a symbol of for resilience and to overcome with grief and disparities.
ในประสบการณ์ตรงเนี่ยนะครับข้าพเจ้าก็คิดว่าการสอดแทรกหรือการใช้มรดกภูมิปัญญาเนี่ยนะครับกับวัฒนธรรมในการเรียนรู้เนี่ยนะครับมีประโยชน์กับผู้เรียนเป็นอย่างยิ่งนะครับประการแรกเนี่ยนะครับเรามองถึงเรื่องของมรดกภูมิปัญญาที่อยู่ในพื้นที่เนี่ยนะครับเด็กๆได้มีโอกาสได้เรียนรู้กับผู้รู้นะครับเป็นปราชญ์นะครับและก็รวมถึงแหล่งเรียนรู้ต่างๆที่อยู่ในพื้นที่นะครับหรือว่าเราใช้ทรัพยากรในพื้นที่ของเราเองนะครับให้เกิดประโยชน์สูงสุดกับการเรียนรู้ของผู้เรียนนะครับในมิติต่างๆทั้งในด้านวัฒนธรรมนะครับในด้านเรื่องของการแสดงก็ดีนะครับรวมถึงการงานหัตถกรรมต่างๆนะครับหรือมรดกภูมิปัญญาด้านอื่นๆด้วยนะครับที่สำคัญก็คือเด็กเราเองได้มีการได้ใช้ความคิดนะครับของการฝึกในเรื่องของการวิเคราะห์สังเคราะห์นะครับคิดอย่างมีวิจารณญาณสิ่งเหล่านี้นะครับพอเด็กได้ฝึกเนี่ยนะครับเด็กก็ต้องได้ลงมือปฏิบัตินะครับลงมือปฏิบัติแล้วก็ได้ภาระงานชิ้นงานที่สะท้อนถึงความสามารถของเด็กนะครับในการต่อยอดมรดกภูมิปัญญาต่างๆด้วยนะครับรวมถึงการที่เราใช้เด็กๆเองนะครับได้ใช้มรดกภูมิปัญญาต่างๆเนี่ยนะครับสร้างมูลค่าเพิ่มในผลิตภัณฑ์ต่างๆที่เด็กๆได้ช่วยกันคิดขึ้นมานะครับ
Within this implementation is that the school directors really excited, and they showed us a very positive response. Especially, they said that since we, since they had ICH education in their school, they observed that their students really change the way they learning and create a very create things within the class creatively. That's why they feel like this is very important, and ICH education it's like trying to dig out, like the real talents of their students in the class by even like how to work as a team, how to discuss and how to present their work, and more importantly, the ICH education create an environment for the student that they really make them happy, so that they, for example, like after they joining the class, that they always feel curious, about this, about that, and this is something that they start using this to to ask other teachers about this, about that, about the reason, about the why, about the outcome, and everything like that.
So I should have said that all these people that you have seen on the screen were part of the pilot project, and you hear from them directly the benefits that they found, whether it's the creativity of I like this idea of identifying talents among the students. I think it's very true because they start shining through their own culture and personality and identity. So now let's move to the core part, which is understanding, reviewing the STEP methodology, which I believe you see now. Yes, it's correct?
Yes,
Yes, we see now. We see. You can start.
Okay. All right, 6 steps. So the core section of the online course is to present you with 6 steps that can be used to create your lesson plans. It covers like this 3 modules, and it goes step by step. Again, this can be flexible, but this is a methodology that has been applied in several contexts, and it seems to work well. So we encourage you to try to apply it. And if something doesn't work, of course, you skip it. Let's just look at the main goal. Like, let's keep in mind this goal. This is very important. We are trying to bring ICH in school, living heritage in school, for 2 main broad reasons. One, from the cultural perspective, is to raise awareness about this living heritage and therefore to safeguard it, allows it to live. And the second one, from the educational perspective, the school perspective, it's to provide education of high quality and relevance to the learner, basically to have happy students. So we have identified these 6 steps that you have probably seen. Let's go to the first one, which is understanding your context. And LK, would you be so kind to launch poll 3 so that I don't get lost? And the first question that we are asking you is, why is the first step of the methodology, according to you, why is it devoted to understanding the local context? Why do we spend time on that? Why do you think that? And okay, so let's get a few more seconds and then we'll stop the poll. Ooh, now answers are trickling in. Okay, so let's look at the results. The vast majority of you answered that it will help you understand what you can do, with whom, where, and when. And this is really the concept that we are putting forward in the class, in this online course, I mean. Some of you have answered it will help you evaluate your lessons outcome better. Maybe, although maybe from my perspective, it's a little bit early in the process, but maybe some of you want to later explain us how you foresee that. And some of you have answered that it will help you start designing your lesson plan. Yes, in a way it is, in the sense that it will allow you to make choices. But what we would like to emphasize here is that understanding the context here will really give you some ideas to enrich your thinking process, to get a lot of ideas and to evaluate a little bit what is feasible or not. And the first element that is quite important, and that links directly to the discussion we had already previously, is identifying living heritage around you. and what living heritage is present around us that could be used in this process. So ICH can be related to the school location. We have talked about the local villages, the local communities, but also the students in the school. And you may have students that come from very different areas because it's an international school, or because students come from different area of the country, and they bring their ICH with them. And that's good, because that enriches the pool of living heritage that is present in the school. And there is also the living heritage that you have yourself, or that your colleagues have. You have knowledge, you have practice about that. So you have this information because you are doing it. You are living this through these practices yourself. And then you have the documented ICH. And this is what we were referring to earlier, the inventories, whether at the local or the national level, or information you find in the UNESCO platform, like the international lists, or information that is collected by research institutes or local association. All this is valid and can be used for different reasons, as we mentioned earlier. Some are closer and more engaging from the students, some are better documented, so we can help the teacher reduce researching time, for instance. How can you identify this ICH? It can be by talking to people from cultural institutions or local professionals, by doing your personal research, by having a class discussion. And one way is to do mapping exercise. And the mapping exercise can be done, for instance, by a group of teachers, yourself and your colleagues together. You can do this exercise as a preparatory work, or you can do that as an activity with students, small research and mapping activities with students. So Manantuna will tell you and us about the mapping activity in Nepal, or Sharare, both.
Both of us. To give a little bit of context, just emphasizing what Vanessa was sharing in the previous slide. In Nepal, in Kathmandu particularly, the valley, the public schools are specifically largely students that are have migrated into the city, and usually people from the local communities are not necessarily sending their students. This isn't true always, but it means that there's a huge gap, and this is actually nationwide, there's a huge gap between the kinds of ICH elements that the teachers would identify with and the students would identify with. And then there might also be a different sort of a gap between where the school itself is located. So the communities that are more closely the locale in which the school is located, the communities there. So there's a lot of bridges that one might need to create. But what was really interesting is that we were faced with this challenge that there were diverse, there were lots of different peoples with diverse backgrounds, a lot of difference around us. So there was a question about, well, how do we begin? How do we ask our teachers to begin in terms of designing their lessons? And so what we did is we tried to develop some very concrete methodologies that would really acknowledge the differences, that would acknowledge the diversity. And that's where we started, is sort of saying, okay, yes, this is what exists. So how do we map that? How do we see that there's so much out there? And it also helped the teachers sort of have a few possibilities to start with. And then from there, they started selecting it. So Manantuna will share some of the concrete ways in which we did some of the mapping exercises.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So one of the ways that we started to really think about how we can map the different ICHs all around us was food, because food could be a very important point of reference, because it is connected to the day-to-day life and it binds people together. It talks about resources that are available right now. So it talks about the harvesting, the land. It is connected to so many things. And also people have a shared ownership of. Another is family ceremonies that are connected to, coming of age ceremonies. like marriage or special anniversaries, which can again be connected to other intangible cultural heritages like food preparations again, and then rituals and practices that require a certain kind of skill and is celebrated due to and pass down oral histories and beliefs. And then there are other ways that we thought about intangible cultural heritage was local sports that were celebrated within the community, and performances like dances and musical performances, which again connected to all these things all together. Another way we also tried to map in a larger community was through the calendar. Vanessa, can you switch the slide? Yeah, so in Nepal, we also use the Gregorian calendar, but we have a Bikram Samvat calendar that we follow in Nepal. And a calendar was a great way for us to, kind of find information about the festivals that we celebrate, and also to get a reminder of what are the events that are coming up, or things that are connected to seasons or moon cycles, or locating other New Years that are celebrated by other ethnic communities, and other ICHs that are again connected with that. Another slide, please. And when we were working with the different schools, they after giving information about what intangible cultural heritage is, they use different methodologies to kind of explore ICHs with the students. Some of the teachers took specific domains like festivals or traditional costumes, and then further went into this with the students by exploring their own communities' connection within the domains. Another school really focused on one specific ICH and then asked students to interview and get information through research, and with that they then asked the students to kind of bring in such ICHs from their own community with the help of these tools that they had. And another, I think, sorry, Didi?
I think that while you're looking, Manan, I think again, just to emphasize that this phase of the mapping was really about celebration. So how do we celebrate the fact that there's so much out there? And so it was a really good excuse to do just research about all the different possibilities from the students, teachers, the communities, and trying to find who are the knowledge bearers in some ways, who are the people who know more about this. Maybe it's some of the guardians of the students might be the people who we could invite. So it was just really about doing the research to see who would be possible, which was something that Vanessa was also talking about.
Yeah, I think the point that I was trying to think about was one of the schools kind of created a celebratory environment where students were, wearing the traditional attires, and then everybody was sort of sharing their performances and showing, the different ICHs that they had brought in from their homes. And then students were also given tasks to report write, so that they can further research from their home and bring it to the classroom and share. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. As you can see from this example, really involving the students can bring a very rich array of living heritage, and it shows a number of resources that you can play with later on when you want to develop a lesson plan. Now let's talk briefly about the type of activities that can be undertaken. And clearly, this kind of approach can be applicable to any type of activity that is run in your school. And it's up to you to see what is the easiest to start with and the easiest to implement, the most feasible, or the one which would be the most useful with the main impact. Many examples that we have deal with extracurricular activities. Why? Because simply extracurricular activities are much more flexible. You can build a component on any theme you want usually, and put your activities and your content, your theme there, and you're not constrained by exams and by a curriculum, etc. So it's usually a quite easy way to start with. Similarly, you can use special days or events that are organized either in the school or in the community, and use these as opportunities to explore one ICH and to have students practice something in relation to these celebrations. Or you can have a school or class projects, and this can be also similarly much more flexible. Like you can have a general theme, I don't know, for instance, energy saving or recycling, and you look at local alternatives on materials that are used that avoid waste, for instance. And then there is curriculum integration. Curriculum integration means that you would take a lesson or several from your curriculum directly, and you don't change the learning objectives necessarily, but you tweak the lesson in order to use ICH as a pedagogical methods that is literally used to teach this lesson, which is inside the curriculum. A lot of you in the preliminary questionnaire were asking, how do you deal with ICH when your curriculum is very strict? If this is possible, this is a way. You don't change the curriculum. You just basically hijack it. You use the same theme, the same lessons, the same learning objectives, and you add a layer, a pedagogical tool, which is connected to ICH. It can be home assignment. You can have the students do some sort of research by themselves. And what is interesting, particularly interesting, is to engage in multidisciplinary lesson and activities where the students will look at one element in various options, with various perspectives. So you can look at one ceremony, like there will be cooking, and there will be a costume, and there will be music, and then you will use different components of these ceremonies, and there will be songs. Okay, the songs can be looked at in language lesson. The cooking can be looked at in maybe chemistry or maybe mathematics lesson, measuring the ingredients. The costume making can be done in art lesson. So everything rolls around one lesson. One ICH, sorry, but from various elements, various perspectives. And by working with your colleagues from the different subjects, first of all, you're not alone, you share the workload. And at the same time, you also show your school management that there is a different dynamic that is created in the school. So a few tips that we highlighted. We encourage you to plan your lessons early, if possible from the beginning of the year, to see from, for instance, a calendar mapping when there are different ICH events that will take place, and try to connect these to your program if it works. As I mentioned earlier, the snowballing, start small with 1 or 2 lessons, and if they work, then you can expand or adjust. Try to work as much as possible with colleagues, also with parents and communities, as long as they are cooperative. I think maybe in the interest of time, we skip this poll, but we would like to really highlight the importance of partners. Partners in the school, colleagues, very important, because they have their own knowledge, because you can share different perspectives and explore the ICH from different dimensions. The school management, having the approval of the school directors, and as we have seen from the different interviews, many school directors welcome this kind of initiatives because they see positive results and it reflects well on their school. Relying on partners in the community, And the partners in the community, first of all, your students, they are your first target, and you're with them every day or several times a week. Their families, because they want their kids to be happy and learn well at school. So they may be willing to participate and contribute to enrich this learning. And community practitioners, because community practitioners are very proud of what they are doing, and they are, in most cases, very willing to share their knowledge. Of course, you have to respect that everyone has time constraints and not everybody is available all the time, but everybody may be willing to share information at certain time. And you can also try to involve institutional partners, whether they are cultural partners or non-cultural partners. So they can be cultural institutions or associations. They can be museums, for instance, or libraries. Yeah, you can be federations, like in Kyrgyzstan, we had a sport federation organizing some traditional games activities during a school celebration. There is the UNESCO family who can participate. So the Associated School Network, for instance, or the UNESCO clubs that we mentioned earlier, or a government or organization. The municipalities or the Department of Education who may be willing to try these approaches, especially if they see that they are linked to their own education priorities. So it requires a little bit of homework to see what are the priorities and of your department or Ministry of Education, and how does this connect to ICH, or how can ICH help achieve this objective, which is, as I mentioned, the case for global citizenship education, education for sustainable development, social-emotional learning, like all this educational program. If they are part of your priorities, your Ministry of Education priorities, it's easy to connect living heritage to that. Of course, it's very important to take into account what is discussed a little bit later in step 3, the free, prior, informed consent of the communities, but basically to have an ethical approach. Whenever you collect information from, for instance, a community member, making sure that this person is informed, that you respect them, that they understand how the information will be used, and that they agree to share. If they don't want to share, then so be it. Change your partners, or try to convince them, understand why they don't want to share, and maybe answer their concerns. So this partnering process is very important for a number of reasons, mainly because it allows you to share resources. You're not the teacher doing everything by yourself. You're surrounded by people who may have more knowledge, more resource, or different knowledge and resources, and help you put together your activities. And also because it helps you build trust and share ownership in the long term. So it will not be a one-time question, or not one-time activity, but the next year you may want to reconduct the activity, and if they have felt properly consulted and they have felt that they are a real partner in this process, they would probably be more willing to help again. So briefly, I stop sharing here to ask you if you have questions about this specific aspect about the context, about learning the context, about the context. Are there specific questions that if not, there will be time for questions later, but is anything, no, not yet?
I think there's one hand raised from Mr.
Yes.
Nile.
Mr. Nile, yes.
Mr. Nile, please unmute yourself. You can turn on the mic. Mr. Nile? I would assume the hand raising is accidental, but if you have question, you can put in the chat.
Okay, so no, it was okay. All right. Okay, so we can go back to questions later then, if you want to. So
I think Mr. Nile just managed to turn on the mic. Yes.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
So please tell us.
Actually, yes. I have specific 2 questions, ma'am. Actually, is it possible to get this presentation or this webinar's link after finishing these sessions? Is it possible for future reference?
I am not sure
Hello?
if the recording will be made available, but most of the content that is here is part of the online course content. This is a very brief summary of the online course. So all this content is already available in much more detail. You have much more detailed video with different examples, and you have all the resources that can be uploaded. Now, I'm not sure if UNESCO will be able to upload this on the platform. That was not the original plan, because this is really a question and answer session related to everything that is already made available to you.
Mm-hmm. So like you actually get the original material, so to say, of this in the online GCED course that you have taken, basically. But we will share with you the record sessions of the recording of the sessions in the email after this webinar. I have another hand raised. Is that okay, Vanessa?
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes. Is it directly related?
Mr. Mark Ritchie, is it directly
Yes.
on? Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, good evening from the Philippines, but I'm a teacher who's working in a university in China. So I designed a lesson. I finished designing a lesson and submitted it online. However, I have a question, Ma'am Vanessa. When it comes to context, of course, it is also of my belief, and it's a must, that we must employ the emic approach of things. However, as an outsider, I'm an outsider, no, of Chinese culture, but I use the ethic perspective, meaning a perspective from the outsider's point of view. So what can you recommend to teachers like me who are working in a foreign culture, but trying to attempt, not I'm trying or attempting to include ICH in my lessons? Thank you.
I would answer from 2 perspectives. Your own perspective. I mean, you have your own culture, and it can be an interesting entry point for comparison and to understand diversity around the world. That's one element. What is explained in the course also is that there is always the possibility for the resource not to be the teacher. The resource persons can be from outside. That's why we are putting a lot of emphasis on this partnering, because if you are trying to integrate certain form of local practices, you are not expected to be an expert in these, but maybe you can invite a parent or a local community member to teach together with you. And you would have the pedagogical knowledge, the pedagogical techniques, and they would bring the local knowledge, and they are the best to explain about the local values. And your students can also be resource people, and it's very powerful to have students teach to students. And it doesn't need to be the whole lesson, but it can be one section of it, and then you build your lesson around that. And Mr. Rupendra, who is here, is actually a community member who was working together with a teacher, and they were sharing different aspects of the lesson. It was a proper partnership, a real partnership, and they put together a lesson, or several lessons actually, for students. So that's one way to approach it. Maybe Sharare, you want to add to that?
No, I thought that was a great answer. I just want to, before we go to the person who's raised their hand, there's a good question in the chat box.
Yes, I would like to read it for you. The one from Miss Maria. Am I right, Sharare?
Yes, that would be.
Yes. So Miss Maria Gurays, I'm so sorry for mispronouncing your name, but hi, while mapping ICH, are we focusing on the local ICH, or can one include elements from different communities or regions also? Especially when speaking of global citizenship education, it is important to share different cultures with the students.
Yes, it's a very good question, and I would say you can do both. Depends a little bit on the angle of your lesson. I think the students will be in a better position to do a detailed mapping of what they have around them, but at the same time they can also do research. They can research, like you can launch topic, I don't know, New Year food, and they can do research and see in different regions there are different types of food that are made for New Year, or costumes. Like they can also, it can be an assignment or a research activity with the students. In this case, they don't have prior knowledge. They discover that, and they discover this diversity. So it depends a little bit on your objectives. If you want them to become aware of the diversity, they can do the research, and then they will discover things. They don't become experts in everything, but they will see the diversity. If you want to go deeper, then it's interesting to focus on their own ICH, because they will be able to have the prior knowledge to explain the values from their own perspective, to interview people in their family or in their community. So it depends. I'm pretty sure that every single question I can answer, it depends.
Well, let me try to recap some answers to Miss Diana, because we have already answered her questions, but I think her connection was lost. So I'm just going to answer quickly. Like Diana, the first question that you asked, like whether you can spice up your program, like in the lesson plan, like, or go out of the plan. Like, for example, you have already shared with us the lesson plan, and you ask, can you change? Definitely, because we do not own your lesson plan, and we do not actually, like, ask you to run a project for us. But so you can definitely change according to your local context anytime, like whatever that have been like coming up as an opportunity on the ground. Shirali has already shared an examples of like a kind of like ad hoc changes that came up to be a very, very good result at the end as well. So I will not go into detail of that. The second question from Diana is that whether you can have a letter or formal notice from UNESCO to implement a teaching that could be noticeable. So that also the same question as Ms. Wang. So I would say that please share with us what you're planning to do first. And we have a panel of experts that would consider what you're doing. And if they are in line with our programs, then definitely we will try to find a way to support you, either by sending some of the recognition to you or acknowledgement of your efforts, and by all means something that would help making your school having visibility and credibility. But first of all, we would like you to please share with us what you're planning to do in your lesson plan. Thank you. We have another question, Vanessa.
Okay.
Mr. Edgardo asked, like, if in a diverse culture like in the Philippines, is it okay to integrate only a certain or specific culture in a lesson? How can I convince students that I am not biased or not being superior to other students' cultures? Or shall I skip off and focusing only on the certain topic of culture? This is a good question as well.
Can I ask Mr. Eduardo to tell me if he followed the module 5, the lesson on multicultural classroom? Have you already been through that lesson? Because there are lots of answers there.
Mr. Edgardo, are you convenient to turn on your microphone?
Because in a nutshell, there are many ways that you can do that, and I would encourage you to have a look at what is explained there. But one way is you can focus one lesson on one topic, and maybe the next lesson you would focus it on a different cultural elements, or you focus your lesson on one ICH element, but you open the discussion to different cultures so that students from other cultures can can share their own perspectives on a similar topic. This would be like some of the ways that are presented in this lesson, and that would allow you to focus, because of course you cannot always cover everything from everywhere. So you focus the core of the lesson. Actually, if you wait, Manantuna will give us an example later on that, towards the later part of the lesson.
Yes, Mr. Edgardo cannot open his mic, but he said like he has already done the module 5.
Okay.
Yes.
So I would suggest that he goes again and look at the different options, because this is really about that. And Manantuna will give us an example of a multicultural context later.
Yes. Okay, so I think we can. I saw a hand raised, but then it already went down. So if you still have the question, you can raise hand again. But so sorry, we couldn't catch your name. But please.
Yeah. So maybe we look a little bit at step 2 already, because it's a lot of questions. It's really nice, but so how to actually connect a living heritage and a school topic. There were many questions about that particular subject in your preliminary questionnaire. And as we explained there can be many entry points. And again, there's not a one way to do that. You can start with one living heritage element, try to understand how this living heritage is, what it means, the value, the different components in the practice, and from there see what would connect to what school subject. What would fit in language, what would fit in math, what would fit in science, what would fit in sports, what would fit in art. Or you can look at the school activities, and you can from like you analyze your curriculum. You look at the curriculum and say, oh, this type of objectives, with what kind of living heritage element can I could I fulfill these objectives? So this is a little bit requires you to have an idea of various living heritage, so that you can pick and choose in the different practices. But we can also encourage you again to refer to the different examples that are in the resources to get inspiration on what could work. Then it can be around a theme, a different theme that is put forward in your school. And from there, you will have different activities or different lessons that would integrate living heritage, like sustainable development, ecology, whatever. And an entry point, which is important to take into account, is the student needs and interest. You can have discussions with them on what kind of living heritage they are most interested in, or what kind of themes they are most interested in, and from that you can do more research. And for instance, in Kyrgyzstan and in Uzbekistan, they had the students to vote. They were looking at various topics, like, are you more interested in performing arts, sports, etc., music, traditional games, etc. And the students were voting, and from that they decided to explore certain themes. It's important that you identify the resources, because you may have some excellent idea of lesson plan, but if they're required to transport all your students on the other side of the country, you may not have the budget, it may not be feasible. So it's good to look at the resources that could be needed for your idea, and you can revise that later on when you have a detailed lesson plan, also to check the feasibility. To look at barriers and limitation, like safety and policies. Like, I mean, we know we were all under COVID with sanitary restrictions. How do you work with that? ICH is practices within the household. So most of the activities that were conducted in the pilot, many activities in the pilots, actually were focusing on the ICH of students, because that's where they were. They could not move around and do research in some countries. So they were doing the research in home. So it's important to do this feasibility check, and to keep thinking of these many options that you have to connect with them, and then one ICH element can really fulfill many subjects. So keep the mind open, look at the different examples, and I'm sure that you will find some connections or many connections. So would you like to tell us about multidisciplinary approach, for instance? Manan.
So after the teachers had mapped the ICHs that were available, that were seen in the community or around the students, the teachers in this particular school really decided on one of the main Tamang community that are studying in the school. So students that were of the majority did celebrate this Sonam Losar, which was the Tamang New Year. And teachers from 3 different subjects used it in their own way, in their own subject. For example, Bodri Sir, who was an English teacher, was part of the same community, so he was a big resource during the whole multidisciplinary approach that they took. What he did was he handed out informations about the Sonam Losar and did a lecture style about the New Year celebration, and had a comprehension style questionnaire that students could answer about the handout. And what this did was that sorry. Yeah.
Please turn off your microphone.
What this did was it really allowed the teachers to know what they've understood, what the students have understood, and what they've not understood. The mathematics teacher first talked about how shapes and the utensils used while creating kapse, which is a special dish that is made during the Sonam Losar celebration. What are the utensils that are used, and talked about the area and the parameters that was discussed before the lesson. And during the main event-like lesson, the students, everyone was involved in creating the dish, and while creating the dish, the different measurements, the recipe was used from one of the students' mothers. The third was the social studies teacher really focused on one of the folk songs that is sung during the Sonam Losar, which is called the Tamang Selo, and divided the students in different groups and tried to bring in the different folk songs that the students of the different communities sing and celebrate together by sharing with one another.
Thank you very much. I mean, this is very concrete. It shows that from one particular celebration, you can make so many connections and have different lessons, either with the same students or with different students. I think we go directly to this third step, which is now that you have connected your living heritage with the school topic, how can you learn more about this selected living heritage? And I think we will skip that for time reasons because we are running very late. First of all, you can think of what information to collect about a living heritage element. There are many informations, and there are people who write books about a certain practice. So obviously you don't want to get to that level. But roughly, it's interesting to understand what the practice is, what it is called, how does it work, the description of the different components, if it is associated with tangible elements, who practices it, who is indirectly involved, for instance, artisans, supporters. In a festival, for instance, you will have the people who are part of the procession, the people who are producing the artifacts for the processions, and the people who will come and see the procession. So different levels of engagement. What are their roles? what are the different groups that are involved. Then what about the time element of this practice? When is it practiced? Is this something that you do once per year, or it is seasonal, related to the season, or it's something that you do every day at home? Where is it practiced? Is this in a special place, or like a special region, a special village, a special type of building, or a special type of sites with a certain spiritual value? Or so where does it take place? How is it practiced? And maybe how is it transmitted? Because transmission is what keeps it alive. And most importantly, why is it practiced? Because what is important is the value of this practice for the community. So what's the meaning, the value, the social function of this practice? Of course, to find out about this type of information, there are a number of ways. You can read existing material, printed, online, different journals, documents and research documents produced by museum, etc. So all the process of desk research. Of course, keeping in mind that if it is secondary data, you may want to look at the credibility of the source. Or through primary data, which means that you will collect your own data, either you or your students conducting interviews, organizing meetings with the community members, going to a field observation, or even participating in the practice and then becoming an actor in it. So you can describe how you lived through that. And you don't need to do the research alone as a teacher. Of course, you can do your own research. You can engage your colleague. Like in the previous example, the language teacher was a community member, had a lot of knowledge and could share with his colleagues. We mentioned about the students who can contribute to the knowledge that they have themselves and bring in the knowledge of their families, and the community members. So how to collect information in an ethical manner. How to collect, like technically you can do a cultural mapping, or to, like we have seen earlier, you can take notes, photos, videos, but it's always important to keep an ethical approach. So be polite if you want to interview someone. Of course, you make an appointment, you explain why you are collecting this information, what you intend to do with that. You're mindful of any bias or misinterpretation that you can bring into the process. There is a document that is called the 12 Ethical Principles of Safeguarding Intangible Heritage that you can consult on the UNESCO website. I believe the link is in the MOOC resources. So basically, you keep in mind this process of free, prior, informed consent. No one forces the person to answer you. They are answering freely. Prior, because they have the information to make their decision before, and they are informed. They have all the information they need in order to give their consent. And it's always nice once you have kept information, once you have sought their collaboration, that you can also involve them to get feedback. For instance, if you design a lesson or an activity, you may want to check with them if the information you use from them actually reflects what they were sharing with you. So I would like to read this quote. I find it very meaningful, from the principal of the Janasewa Secondary School in Nepal. I found a huge cultural gap among my students, where many of them are from different districts but grew up in Kathmandu. We have students from all 77 districts in our school. They do not seem to know much about their own culture. When they could not do the assignment, I searched on the internet and found a list of possible ICH from where they are from. I asked them to list them and look into them. A few children came back with some very thorough essays about ICH practiced in their own communities. I also put the students' classroom photos on the internet, which motivated them. Now they are excited, and I wish I could do more of this. So yes, the first the first statement, they do not seem to know much about their own culture. Probably it depends on whose culture it was, and maybe it was actually not their own culture. And once they were actually finding engaged on a topic they are familiar with, suddenly they become productive. So hence the importance of really trying to engage the students as much as possible. So.
Sure, yeah. Also, just to give that a little bit of context, the students were from all over Nepal, and so most of them, because they were born in Kathmandu, like we had said earlier, a lot of the kids don't actually like they don't identify, so their parents are from different places, but they're not necessarily they don't know where the culture of their parents as much because they're not being able to practice it as much. So they're sort of in between. And so Devrad sir was finding that the internet was a really great way to just start conversations for them. So then they went home and they started asking. And then as soon as the students started asking questions, they got answers. So Devrad sir got really excited because now suddenly the students had all these exciting things they wanted to share with him. And then the teacher and student relationship actually got even better. So it was quite exciting. So this idea of like, I mean, I felt like the phrase sort of, I don't know, actually was a great starting point for asking and being curious. So I thought that was really brilliant with Devrad sir and his students as well. And then this is another teacher also from Kirtipur, Savitri Mahajan. And she did research on something that was coming up for her. So when we were doing the pilot, her father-in-law was becoming 77 years old. It was his 77-year-old 7-month, 7-day birthday. And she was just about to teach sets. So she's a math teacher and she was supposed to teach sets. So she was trying to combine these two things. And so she had this phase of being like, does this even make sense to teach together? And then as she started sort of doing more research about Jangku and thinking about these together, she found a way to bring these two lessons together. And so she started asking her family, and then she designed an extremely relevant and meaningful lesson that combined these two things.
Okay, so maybe we do a little break here and check if you have questions, because that was maybe a long presentation already with many concepts and many interesting examples.
So this is also a time for question again.
Yes.
Yes. Anybody would like to raise hand or write in the chat? We have a few. Miss Jai Hua Liao first before Miss Mariam Reyes, then Miss Jai Hua Liao. Miss or Mr. Please turn on your mic. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the course and thank you very much for this webinar. I have a question regarding bringing ICH into foreign or second language classrooms. In this course and earlier in this webinar, you did mention about approaches such as having students compare ICH from different cultures. But when it comes to foreign language teaching, we do want to emphasize the SH from the community of the target language. But as I understand, ICH is very much connected to the local community, and the heritage should be part of the identity of the students and transmitted through generations. But when learning a foreign language, students do not have this connection to the SH taught. The heritages are not part of their identity and will not be transmitted by them. So I wonder in what sense are we safeguarding the heritage in this case? I'm not saying that it doesn't matter, but I just wonder how teaching SH not directly related students fit into this framework of the course. And a second question, I didn't find any references or bibliography at the end of the course. Would it be possible that the relevant literature be shared for further study or references? Thank you.
Okay, I believe there are some references that are that are shared in the resources, but maybe it's in the guide. So we will double check that. But definitively we have some references on GCD and on ICH and on various concepts that are brought together here. If they are not, we will upload them. Now to answer your first question about teaching a foreign language. Well, first of all, I guess that when you are talking about you're teaching a foreign language, one of your objective is that the students will develop some sort of knowledge of the grammatical structure and of the vocabulary. And one way to do that is to write some essays or to talk about a certain topic. And I understand that in some cases you focus on the culture of the target of the how do you put that? I'm sorry, like the foreign language people. Not your, like say if you teach English, you will focus on English culture. But in a way, nothing prevents your students to learn to talk about their own culture in the language that you're teaching, whatever the language is. So there can be this option that they talk about their own culture in the language that you're teaching. And then if you're following a curriculum or a textbook where they are presenting certain aspects of let's say the English culture or the American culture or the Italian culture or the I guess you're based in China, so Japanese culture, like the language you're teaching, there can be again a discussion on that's what they would do in that particular country or that particular area, and what would you do in your country, and then you establish this connection by comparison. So I see that there is a space for that. It's a matter of tweaking a little bit the curriculum to allow this entry point to exist. Do you see what I mean? Is this clear, or should I try to rephrase it?
There has always been a need to include the culture of the cultural heritage of students themselves, right?
Not necessarily, but it's an element of comparison. You can talk about other people's living heritage. It's fine too. You can talk about the practice of other people by explaining the context. The thing is that they may not have a deep insight in that. If you want to establish this strong engagement, it's usually good to link it to their own experience, whether it's the core or it's the fringe of the discussion. But you can use the local practices of another culture. It's fine too, as long as it is contextualized.
Yeah, thank you. But I still don't quite get it. Like, I mean, when I'm teaching about the cultural heritage of the other culture, not the culture of the students, then it doesn't have any connection to themselves. So how do we, like, in what sense?
No. It doesn't have any connection, but I'm sure they have similar connection. They may have parallel connection. Yeah, sure, please, Sharari.
It was similar. So the example that we just shared, the Savitri Mahajan, she's also so similar to Devraz Mahajan. She's from the Newa community. So the Dzongkhu celebration is something that the students were not familiar with. So when she was teaching the sets, so I mean, this isn't the language, but it'll probably apply. So she was teaching a math activity, but the ICH element is not something that the students were familiar with. So what she did is she actually invited them, because she was sharing an ICH element that she's familiar with. The students were actually really, really curious, because they wanted to know a lot about their teacher, and their teacher was sharing something about her life. It was also extremely engaging the way she did it. So she did a lot of role play. She invited the students to dress up. They became the elderly people in the community. So she did a lot of role play and acting and performing arts that she incorporated into her lesson to make it engaging and fun. And there was another example right in the chat right now about using games. So, you know, you can invite people into being interested into a different culture than what they're used to. I mean, I think it's about how you do it and how you create that connection.
And that you explain the value that it has. Like if you present the ICH of another community, it's usually good to understand the values that are behind that, because often the students can also connect to values. There can be values of sharing, of collaboration, cooperation, of establishing peace, of respecting environment, respecting elders. Like the practice itself, wherever it takes place, will have certain values, and some of these values are international. So you can, it's one way to do that, to establish the connection, is to look at the values, but it can just be learning about someone else's culture.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry for taking so much time, but I guess my confusion was just in the point that in the beginning, it was stressed that the heritage is part of the identity of students and should be transmitted through them. So that was my confusion. So thank you.
It's not compulsory. What we are saying is that it's a very good entry point. They will have their own practice, and if you build up on these practices, it's very engaging for them because they are sometimes very familiar with the practice, but it's not compulsory. You can look at someone else's culture as long as it is contextualized.
Yeah, and it encourages them to, sorry, Vanessa, it also encourages them to explore their own cultures. So, like, for example, a discussion about family and how different families attend an event also sort of would inspire the students to think about their own culture, and what happens in their own culture makes them curious about wanting to learn about their own ICH elements. So by learning about someone else's ICH element, it sometimes allows you to explore your own further as well.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, next we have Mariam
Thank
Reyes.
you, Ms. Mariam Reyes, please.
Yes, good evening to all. Thank you, mentors, and thank you for the privilege to ask a question. And of course, I want to give first my compliment. Anyway, I am Miriam F. Reyes from Philippines. I'm Filipino language teacher of grade 9 students, where I teach Asian literature in Filipino. Actually, I'm still grappling on what I could put on my lesson plan about the language teaching, till I realized that Philippines has a very unique and special ancient writings that our generation today doesn't know it. It was called baybayin. Since every Asian have a special calligraphy, the same with the Philippines. We have to, but it doesn't evolve anymore. But there are some advocates like bloggers, professionals, and teachers that they are broadcasting this kind of cultural heritage. And even as teachers, we don't know how we integrate it to our lesson, even we want to teach it. So till this living heritage or ICH could make it possible to share this awareness of our Filipino heritage. And so I think this baybayin that I'm talking about is that I can integrate it on our events like National Language Month. And it is a month long, and it was celebrated the month of August. So this is a compliment to the program of UNESCO, and we thank you so much for enlightening us. Thank you, UNESCO. And so my question is this. I found in the module 1 about the lesson plan of living heritage. Can we follow the template and the detailed plan of the lesson just like that in the module? That's my question.
Okay, so to briefly answer your question, yes, there is the template. You're welcome to use it. You don't need to use it if you have your own school template. We don't want to confuse you, but some people do not necessarily have a template. That's why we provided one. But otherwise, feel free to share whatever you're used to. because I'm sure we can find the same types of components, similar types of components. So there is no compulsory element. Just quickly reacting on your idea of the language and the script, there is an example actually in it was in Europe, in Estonia, where they also have an ancient script, and they were using the script as part of like ancient script as part of the math lesson, trying to get the students to read that and to do conversion between the ancient measurement and the new measurement and things like that. There is a case study that was written, I think, on that topic, and that can be that is available on the UNESCO website. We can link that to you.
Thank you very much, ma'am. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, so I do not see any other hands. Are there some? Yes, Mark Ritchie.
Yes, Mr. Mark. Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah. I just wanna, I just wanna react about the one from China. It's like I'm teaching Chinese students, but I just wanna ask. No, I'm just doing this kind of lesson in which, let's say, I understand where she's coming from. Like, for example, the target language is American culture. So what I do is, let's say, I let my students watch, for example, Friends, but my line of questioning is more on the values of Chinese culture. So it's like trying to integrate what they can see from the let's say the clip, right, from Friends, but that's the target culture, American culture. But my way of soliciting ideas from them is based on the comparative questions, like let's say, could you see the value of family, of strong family ties in some scenes of Friends, something like that? Will that qualify under this kind of notion of ICH lesson plan?
Yes, the notion of values is very important. Now it goes a little bit beyond because it's value through practice. I know Friends, but not enough to know if there would be some components of Friends that are typical tradition. But I'm pretty sure that they may have a Thanksgiving party sometimes in one of the episodes or something like that. That would be not just the daily life, but that you would see as a cultural practice. So I would select the episode where something is happening, or where we are celebrating the 4th of July. I don't know if it happens, honestly. I watch only a few episodes, so I'm sorry. But yeah, trying to see some of the activities that they have in the episode, in various episodes, and to focus on these ones where some activities, like some of their interactions, relate to some cultural practices. And after that, connecting to the values of the Chinese students or of the students is a very good way to initiate discussion. Although you could also say that Friends in itself is pop culture, so it's also intrinsically a reflection of American culture. But
thank you for validating my practice. Thank you.
Sharare, you want?
Yeah, just in addition, just that, I mean, in Friends, how they gather in the coffee shop. I think that's a great starting point to think about, well, where do we gather? Where do you gather? Where are opportunities for friends to talk about their issues and problems? And then that does lead to intangible cultural heritage elements, possibly. So, I mean, it could connect.
I will watch Friends tonight to try to connect better. I was not prepared for that, sorry.
Thank you. I think there was one more person raising hand, Mr. Pongsathorn, but he put it down already. Mr. Pongsathorn, you don't have a burning questions anymore, do you? Or would you like to?
I don't have the question. I just would like to highlight about the example of this program for the teaching foreign language, like for second language. For example, in the online course, you have about the Kim Jun culture or kimchi culture. I think that's what is a good example for teaching ICH for modern language. For example, if you teach Korea, that one is a good example. If you teach like a Japanese, we have like the soup that you can use it to teach the student. I just would like to highlight this example.
Yes, thank you very much. Absolutely, you can find some iconic type of local practices and build upon that. Yes. Yes. Should we move forward a little bit? And then we keep the next questions for later. All right.
Yes.
Okay. So, all right. So, do you see my screen now?
Yes, we do.
Okay. So let's talk about. I'm sorry, it's too late to do the quiz. Of developing lesson plans that are connecting ICH. So let's say you have now your connection. You have established that you want to teach this subject with this ICH, and you have a concept, and you have collected information of this ICH. So you start looking at all the different components, values that exist in this ICH and what can become part of your lesson. Of course, you will not use probably all the information that you have collected. You have to select some of it, but you start having a concept. So as a teacher, you may want to start with your lesson goals and lesson objectives. This is especially important if you have a curricular lesson, because that's where you can connect that to your existing curriculum. In the samples that are given in the resources, we use the framework, the standard, which is knowledge, skill, attitudes, which is quite widespread, but this is not compulsory at all. You can have other standards, like some of competency standards. Feel free to use any standards that is in use in your educational context, and try to reflect on what are the students expected to know at the end of the lesson in terms of the subject, but maybe also in terms of ICH. And how does the lesson create awareness about ICH? Because that's the purpose of linking them. And how does ICH add values to the pedagogical activities? So that's why you have several examples where the learning objectives and the lesson goals are framed, and they include the name of the ICH to show the additional value that this ICH brings to the lesson. You have to think about the structure and the content of the lesson. So when we talk about bringing ICH in the school, ICH can be a major or a minor component of the lesson. You can talk about that for 5 minutes at the beginning, just to bring the students to make them interested in the lesson. So it becomes like a wake-up call, and after that you conduct a regular lesson. Or it can be the complete support of all the components of your lesson. There's no compulsory format about that. And it can, of course, as we mentioned already, be a cross-cutting theme for several subjects. You can include lectures in your lessons, and these lectures can be done by the teacher, of course, but they can also be done by a community member or a family member who will come and explain about what is this practice, how do we do it, why do we do that. You can have class activities. We encourage active pedagogies. They usually fit very well with this kind of lessons, which are a little bit more innovative. Like you can see the role play that Manantuna was mentioning earlier. Or Sharare, sorry. And you can, of course, involve home assignments and local research by your students, as we talked about. And keep in mind that sometimes there are traditional pedagogies that can be integrated in your lesson themselves. I think, for instance, of storytelling. In many countries, storytelling is practiced in certain ways, and the lesson subject, lesson topic could be brought in the format of the storytelling. So it becomes really the pedagogical mean. So you select and develop your pedagogical materials. As we mentioned, you will probably have gathered at that stage a lot of information on ICH. You want to share information, but you don't want to overwhelm your students, so keeping a balance. You can use photos, videos, drawings. You can film interviews. The students can film interviews, and this can be used as part of the class. You can bring in tools and objects, like we have seen earlier in the previous slide, like they are wearing the clothes, and they are wearing like this scarf to attach the holy image. And you can use different types of ways to share the information, whether it is PowerPoint or posters or postcard or handout. And I don't know if you see very well, but I like, for instance, this handout from Cambodia, which is in one single A4 page. It's summarized for the students, like the different steps of how to make a mat, and then an activity that would practice the same technique for the students. And here you have a little bit of explanation on the materials. So it's very straightforward. In one page, you have a lot of information. You have to think about the lesson space and schedule. Of course, you can work in the classroom. That's pretty safe, but feel free, if it is allowed and possible, to go outside in the yard, as we have seen with the chariot, where they are training and rehearsing the drill, or even go on field trips if you have the opportunity, which is even more enriching. You can visit workshops of craft people, for instance. Scheduling can be done in a very creative manner. You can have your regular lesson spread over several weeks. You can make sure that you combine of your lesson close to an ICH celebration. You can bring several periods of teaching together to have a longer block to do something that requires more time in one go. We will see an example from Nepal later, which very creative teachers about that. And then think of the resources that are needed for the lesson, the space, information that you need to gather, the resource people you want to involve, materials, equipment. So think of the feasibility, and of the feasibility in the long term. Is it a lesson that you will do 1 year, or that you will want to repeat every year? And if it's too complicated, you will not do it several years in a row. So think about the replicability. And then to make the teaching and learning happen, what we want to keep in mind is that we want the lesson to stimulate ICH awareness and practice as much as possible, involving the students in activities, and opening, like having the lesson open opportunities for conversation, so that students find their platform to share their ideas and their viewpoint, their perspective on the ICH that is presented, on their own practice if it's not the same. So to really open a dialogue among the students and having this exchange. And it's important that the lesson ensure respect and appreciation for others' experience, other practices, whether they are similar or different. You can have several students who are practicing the same ICH, but in slightly different way. And it doesn't mean that one is wrong and the other is right, because there is no element of authenticity in ICH. So they can have the same values or the same type of practice, but in different formats. And it's important to remain flexible and adjust the lesson to the need of the students in this classroom. Of course, you want to respect your lesson objective. You want to reach there. But often when you have these lessons, you can start exploring avenues with students that you were not foreseeing before. So I would encourage you, if you can, to keep the door open to a little pedagogical adventure if it goes a road that you were not foreseeing. Would you like to talk about this example of ladder making?
Yes. So here, Hiralal sir is a math teacher who integrated the traditional ladder making process in his trigonometry class. So Hiralal sir has a great example where the lesson the intangible cultural heritage supported his unit, and the unit supported the intangible cultural heritage equally. He had used spaces, he used classroom as a space, he used field visit, and he used the outer space of the school too during his lesson plan. He also did a great scheduling of his lesson, because the trigonometry lesson, as he said, had a 12 period session that he had to finish it by. And what he did was he divided his periods according to that, and 5 of the periods he managed to finish what was expected in the textbook, and he visited the neighborhood to see the different kind of traditional ladders that were around the neighborhood. And secondly, he also communicated with a carpenter within the neighborhood to understand how understand the skill used to create the traditional ladder. This was all completed in 5 periods, and after that, the rest of the 7 periods he used one whole day, which he contacted with the management, and he used the whole day to kind of practically showcase so that the students could practically create the ladder together using the trigonometric formula.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, it was a pretty creative way of running the lesson, and you still have the blackboard or the whiteboard component and the students working with calculators as it is expected from mathematics lessons, but they also had a number of really fun applications, and several of them commented that now they really understand the trigonometry concepts because it was very practical, which I found lovely. Let's go briefly to step 5, which is about the documentation and the importance of documenting your process. We are encouraging you to document not only the lesson itself, of course you will have the materials, but to document the process of development of this lesson and the outcomes. And you can involve your colleagues and your student in this documentation process, because it will help you, first of all, to have a record for later use and to be able to maybe adjust your lesson if needed, because you can measure also the impact on ICH safeguarding by looking over the years at how the students are understanding a certain topic, because it will also help for a consistent student assessment year after year. We encourage you to share your experience with colleagues with whatever ways is done, whether it's a newsletter, online or printed, or social media, or through your forum, or through different types of networks. And Sharare, would you like to talk a little bit about the online network of teachers during COVID?
I think we can go ahead. I'll type it.
Okay, all right. And it's also important to document, to maintain your relationship and your exchange with the students and the community. So you can, for instance, if the community contributed to a lesson and you organize an exhibition, you invite them, or you organize a show and you invite them to participate so that they can see the result of their efforts. We can see that it was worthwhile. We can witness it directly. Or students can go and participate in a community event. And the last step, which can go hand in hand with the documentation or parallel to the documentation, is the evaluation of and the assessment of the lesson. And we are talking about assessment of the learning outcome. Of course, you have your regular assessment process related to the subject you're teaching. But in addition, you may want to look at if the students understand the information about the living heritage, if they have become more aware and more interested in ICH, and if this school activity helps them respect the values of the ICH and of the practice. So for that, you can use various tools like self-assessment by the students. You can do observation. You can do exams and tests. You can look at the child development, the physical, social, emotional, cultural, and attitude dimensions of the child. So you can look at these various aspects. And it's also interesting to look at the evaluation of the process. You have done this effort, you've put together research, documentation, new activities, etc. Did it add value to your lesson? So does it make the lesson more fun and more interesting, more meaningful for the students? You would see that, like, if the students have better results, or if they participate better, if there is a better relationship or a good dynamics in the class. And this you can done with personal observation, by getting colleagues' feedback. Sometimes the teachers are inviting one of their colleagues to observe a classroom and give feedback on that. Or simply by talking to your students and asking them simple questions like, what part of the lesson did you like? Why do you think we used the living heritage here? So let's look at another interesting example from Nepal.
I will start sharing, okay?
Yes.
Can you see the screen?
Yes, we can.
So this is a lesson plan that we created for teachers to really understand how intangible cultural heritage can be used as a pedagogic tool with connection to the lesson and curriculum of the school. So this is a lesson based on Mo Puja, which is a ritual that comes every year, and it is connected to the harvest season because it is linked to, you know, celebrating oneself and one's own body. It talks about nutritious food, and it again connects to the land and the harvesting season. And it comes every year so that the lesson can be repeated across the years and can be changed accordingly. This was a lesson that was created thinking about the teacher being the intangible cultural heritage practitioner. So he could really, he or she could really, you know, research on it and add his own experience of celebrating the intangible cultural heritage. So Mo Puja, the lesson itself had a component of creating a mandala and then having nutritious food, different elements put on the mandala itself. So what the teacher could possibly do was take references from his own community, from his own grandfather, who is a farmer, who knows about the harvest, you know, who knows what is produced when and why these things are used during the mandala making. He could bring in resource people that are within his household, like his mother, because his mother knows how the whole ritual is done, and they do the whole ritual process of cooking food and getting the materials and knows all the information about it. Another is the linkage with the curriculum. So not every intangible cultural heritage can be directly linked to the subjects. We kind of have to find ways and components and elements to connect it together. But in this case, because it talks about nutritious food, the teacher could directly connect it with the lesson plan. And it also could be connected other subject matters like mathematics, because the mandala was created in a mathematical way with using shapes and angles, and in social studies because it had a lot of rituals and practices connected to it. So with the partners could be the teacher the teachers, family members, and community members themselves. But not only that, but students who already celebrate the ritual, you know, and with that also teachers who teach these subject matters can also be partners for the teacher. So while creating the lesson plan, it is also very important to, you know, kind of structure the lesson so that it's easier for you when you start doing the lesson. It can be divided into different things about the intangible cultural heritage itself, and you can also have time to connect it with your own lesson plan. So the teacher really kind of practicing it himself so that you can see what things can be changed within the lesson. So for example, in the mandala making, it is actually done on the floor, but in his own classroom, it may not be possible, and really kind of tweaking the lesson according to what can be possible in terms of managerial aspect of it. And, you know, so the teacher here has decided on doing it on the paper itself, which can be more quicker for him, you know, and can create a lot of preparatory, be easy for him. Lessons also include assessment within the lesson itself, where the students, where the teacher really kind of thinks about what the intangible cultural heritage, if the students are understanding the intangible cultural heritage or not, or what aspect of it are they not understanding. And really having conversations and using the active pedagogies, sharing with the students, sharing with the students or in the whole larger group. And then really kind of connecting it to their own community, because all the students from the community, all the students from the school might not be celebrating the lesson. So really thinking about how they can connect it with their lesson. Here, the teacher has used it as a home assignment. So really talking about going to their house, where the students go to their house and talk to their elders about what nutritious food they eat, and is there any special nutritious food that is eaten during a special event. And then again, bring this sense of assessment into the lesson by asking simple questions about what they learned today and what was interesting for them and what question they have in their mind. And I think at the end, having the evaluation process built in within the lesson plan, by having an exhibition where they can explore and share to the community who can be invited into the exhibition and share what they have learned, and also sharing from the community itself.
Thank you very much, Manantuna, for again sharing a very exciting example from Nepal, very, very well structured and very rich. So maybe we can take a few questions at this stage, if there are some. We are terribly late, but I guess that's because you're...
I think we could allow like 2 questions.
Yes.
If somebody would raise your hand, please.
Maybe for the interest of time, Vanessa, the people have been putting comments in the chats pretty actively. So maybe it's okay if we move, it's okay.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
So, Okay, fine. So maybe we can look quickly at the last themes, and maybe you will have some last questions that are coming to your mind.
We have just one question, but repeating one, but it would be good to clarify. Mr. Gao Kozo asked, do you have any sample or prescribed lesson plan template for us to follow? If you could answer that quickly, please.
If you look at the workbook, for instance, that is provided as a resource in the online platform, there is I think it's called the workbook or the worksheet. I don't remember the exact name, but it follows a certain structure and it gives an idea of lesson plan. You can also look at the sample lesson plans that are provided, which are very short, very much summarized. They are not real lesson plans. They are just summary, but they give an idea of a structure. And I think we have one example of the lesson, What is ICH? Which is the expanded version of the summary. So that would be an example of a template. If you look at how this lesson, What is ICH, is built, you can use this model if you want to. It's a model that has been developed in collaboration with teachers from many countries, but it's not, it's by no means a compulsory structure or compulsory templates. It can just help you if you don't have one. I would suggest that you look at what is in practice in your school or in your country. I'm sure they have standards for that.
I think we can go ahead.
Yes, yes, except that I have, oh, I'm sharing already. Okay. Sorry, so I just need to put it in large. Okay, you see it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, so let's look at sustainable approaches to integrate heritage in living heritage in the curriculum and in the school. This is a melting pot of different topics that we found interesting. Several of them we have discussed already, including living heritage in multicultural classroom environment. We have talked about that a little bit, but some of the avenues for reflection that are giving is to select something that is widely practiced, a widespread celebration. So you can think of there will be New Year everywhere, there will be weddings everywhere, there will be birthday everywhere, there will be like this kind of, everyone will have breakfast habits, everyone will have a certain way to cultivate food or different types of food. So you can use an element like in Asia, you could look at rice cultivation, and you're pretty sure that your students will connect to it, even if they don't come for that specific area. You can host cultural days, exhibition festivals with the participation of students and their families, because in this way, everyone can express their own culture in their own way. You can encourage the students to discuss and exchange information. For instance, you study one element with one reference, one cultural context, but then you open the discussion to encourage the students to discuss on their own perspective on that topic, even if they come from a different background. Students can research their own living heritage. You give a common subject topic, but they each look and do their research in their own context and families. Or you can, throughout the year, for instance, select living heritage from diverse communities. Like you will pick one element from one group in the first term, and then next term you pick another one. And then you don't look as if you are focusing only on one group. So that these are some areas, and we can see this example. We have touched upon that already, but maybe Manantuna, you can speak a little bit more about the folk song.
Yeah. So this is part of the Sonam Losar lesson where the social studies teacher took from the Sonam Losar, which is a New Year celebrated by the Tamang community, and then talking about the Tamang Selo, the Nepali folk song that is sung during the during the Sonam Losar, and then dividing the students into smaller groups where they share their own folk songs and clips of songs that they really, folk songs that they really like. It doesn't have to be from their own community. It can be folk songs that they listen on the radio or, you know, on the internet. And then what the students had to do was at the end of the lesson, they had to perform. So they really shared with each other their own folk song. And even if they didn't know the language themselves, they were kind of practicing it to perform at the end. So it was a great way of sharing with each other and with the classroom as a whole.
So a very good illustration of this this impact of you start with one example and then you radiate. Then we were having a topic on cultural mapping and a special example from Korea. Because they have performed curriculum mapping, and this is interesting, for instance, because it allows you to identify entry points in your curriculum and also strengths and weaknesses, like in some cases in the example. So we didn't do the whole curriculum, we just selected a few components, but we were looking at all the objectives, the themes, the learning objectives of the curriculum of some subjects. And then they were looking if there was already in the textbook content related to ICH, either general about the importance of understanding culture or very specific about one element, one type of performing arts or one type of sports. And then we were looking at if the information was accurate or not, and if it was deep enough, if it was going into just descriptive of looking at the values that are underlying. And this really opened doors to when it identified entry points for more information on ICH and multidisciplinary learning. So at the end of this curriculum mapping, we actually developed a number of lessons. Another example from Korea, based on Korea, is about looking at multidisciplinary projects, but we had a few examples already. So I encourage you to look again if you want at this topic, where you can see how different element of the culture of making and eating and preparing kimchi, for instance, or the process of making mother of pearl inlay linked into different topics as varied as career opportunities and ecology. There is also some one lesson that is looking at long-term partnership, the importance of looking at developing long-term partnerships for the reasons that we explored earlier, because you share the resource, you share the workload, and you develop this trust and this relationship. So it's particularly important to have the school management on board for that, and to keep a good term relation with the community and the other partners by engaging in genuine exchanges, getting feedback from them, not just getting the first information and then running away, but getting feedback, acknowledging their contribution, and giving back to them by showing them the results of your work, for instance. And eventually, if needed, to think about compensation, if they have to teach and use materials or to come to your place, for instance. And then we have the connection of living heritage in classroom with education priorities, as we mentioned already: global citizenship education, education for sustainable development, mother tongue-based education, social-emotional learning. These are initiatives that are often already promoted by the schools or by some ministries of education. And because there is complementarity between this approach and teaching with living heritage, they can become entry point in the school program. So I'm not going to read that completely, but you can see that GCED can benefit from teaching with living heritage. because it brings these concrete examples, and that living heritage benefit from GCED because if you involve that, it contributes to safeguarding, or because you will talk about equity and social justice, which are part of the values promoted in the society. So this is a rich module. It's very difficult to summarize in a few points, but it's important to keep in mind that these are options for you to facilitate your negotiation with your school management, for instance. If you're interested in developing a project and they have a project on GCED, you can refer to the materials in the program and then show the complementarity and show how they are actually working together. So having said that, I see that the chat is very active, but we still have a few minutes for a few questions if you want.
The chat just kind of bumps out very fast.
Yes.
I try to fetch out the question. Is
So
there anybody who would like to raise hand to ask the question?
I see one, the last one, is localization and living heritage the same? I do not know what is localization, so I'm sorry.
You mean contextualization, Melanie? I guess it means contextualization as well. Vanessa?
Yes, well, it's probably very much overlapping if it's contextualization, as long as you keep the concept in mind of what is living heritage, which is a cultural practice that is connected to people's identity. If it's contextualization just in terms of geography, for instance, it may not be living heritage.
Thank you. I already have a hand raised from Mr. Nilay Ray. Mr. Nilay, would you like to open your mic? Mr. Nilay? Oh. Okay. Can you open your mic, please?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am, for your excellent presentation. But I have thinking about these issues, and I'm thinking how can we integrate ICH in our day-to-day teaching learning process in different subjects in our premises, academic premises. But I think that if it is a very nice presentation, and I think the students in every level, they enjoy it, and I think they are very active. It is an interactive session, and they involve in the teaching learning process more than the chalk and talk method. But being a teacher as an university or school, if we try to develop our lesson plan or cultural mapping or documentation like that, the workbook, worksheet related with ICH, there is a huge financial involvement, I think. So how can we manage? Have you any light on it? Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. There can be a huge financial investment, but I don't think it needs to be. I think it's a matter of listing your resources and seeing what is available, seeing what costs what. If it costs something, can you replace it by something else? If you organize a field trip, it will cost money, but depending on where the field trip is, you may be able to walk there. Depending on where you go, you may be able to share a parent's car. I mean, there are creative ways of doing things. So if you need to bring in materials, maybe you can, that's where partnerships come in. Maybe some parents can lend or give some items. This was the case, for instance, in Kyrgyzstan. They set up an ICH museum in one of the schools without using any money. They advertised the fact that they wanted to do this project. They contacted different parents and community members who donated items for the ICH museum. So the school had a room, they had to dedicate a room, but basically that was it. It didn't cost money. If you want to film something and do video materials and recording of the practice, you can buy a very expensive camera or a video camera, or you can use phones. And nowadays, pretty much everyone has a phone. So, and the phone will not cost much. So there is always a way of seeing how can you reduce your cost, and seeing what is feasible. And okay, if you cut a cost, is the activity still meaningful and useful? That's a judgment. But I think there is a way to think through the process without disbursing huge amount of money. Sharare, you may have some light on that also, because I know that's a topic we discussed quite a bit at some stage.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a really relevant question. So I mean, Nileji, like I think it's something that definitely needs to be addressed, and something that we talked about from the very beginning is how do we involve different stakeholders when teachers were starting to come up with pilots and they were piloting the lessons. We were constantly inviting. So UNESCO in Nepal constantly invited the local municipality to join the meetings, to be updated. And then at the end, whichever municipalities were more active, actually these happened to both be extremely active municipalities, they made a commitment to wanting to support it. But like Vanessa said, the commitment might be, like it's a particular amount of resources, but it's not extremely high. I mean, it's about slight adjustments, and it was about encouragement. It's about trying to channel some of the budget so that the teachers would have the freedom to invite people and maybe even pay them a little bit if possible, or they would have a little bit more money for materials. So there were particular things that the money would be needed for, but they weren't so large at this point. But things like doing more research would be something that would cost more money. And so the municipality would then organize themselves to do more research, or the municipality decided to do a newsletter that would connect all the teachers in all the schools. So those were extra resources at the municipality, but that was because there was a sense of shared ownership and everybody sort of came on board. So, I mean, it was so important to involve all these different people in the process to see, well, what kind of resources do we need? So like Vanessa said, like some things don't need money, but you need people. Or, so what are the kinds of resources you're actually talking about? Like, it's really important to be clear so that you can then look for those resources and involve more people in it. So that's a thought that comes to mind.
Yes, and even you mentioned research, for instance, in terms of research where there could be associations who are already interested in a certain themes and would be willing to do research on that topic, or who may have done research on that topic already, or universities who have done that already, or may be willing to partner with you and do part of it. So yeah, it's being a bit creative in who you partner with and where you find information and where you find like what resource do you need and where can you find it, and does this really require money or not, or can you find an alternative?
And Shantiniketan is such a rich place, right? I mean, there's already so much work that's been done in Shantiniketan in relation to these kinds of issues. So it's all, I mean, that place itself is such a resource. Its history is such a resource. Its pedagogic history is such a resource. So, I mean, it's already such a vibrant community, probably. I'm imagining, I mean, we always hear about Shantiniketan as such a vibrant community. So you would probably have so many people you could reach out to. I don't know.
Okay, so I think we have reached out the time. Is there one last burning question or should we close?
Thank you, ma'am. Okay.
Okay, is there any more question?
One last one if you want.
One last one. Who would like to be the last one? Well, I guess it's kind of fulfilling already, Vanessa.
It was a lot of information.
It was a lot of information.
You're probably stunned.
So just to debrief, like on the way out, let me just share my screen one moment. Just one moment. Okay.
Oh, I saw a last hand raised.
Oh, okay. I'll stop sharing one. Okay, please, Mr. Yao.
Sorry, just one question about the professor who shared our mandala teaching methods in class of Nepal. I'm from China. I'm doing my PhD of heritage in Barcelona. My question of her is that how did her came out with these specific methods? I mean, and how did she get this inspiration? I'm sure it's along the teaching experience, but I would like to know, like, maybe something inspired her, like maybe what was the interesting part that inspired her of conclude that teaching methods. I think it's which like design, put mandala in class. It's really genius idea.
So this was thank you. So this was a lesson that we actually designed so that the teachers can have an idea of how an ICH would look like. So this is not actually done in the classroom, but he's one of the national trainers of Nepal, and he has always been interested in documentation. And this particular ICH, this is one of the ICH that he has been celebrating for 30+ years, and he has seen his mother sort of work on it, and put so much effort on it. So it has been an interesting ICH for him already.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
There's
Thank you.
Sanjeev's article in Upset, I think in the magazine. Is it possible to send the link, LK?
Sure. Would you like to send the link now, or would you like to send it to me and I'll put it in the email to everyone as well? I mean,
yeah, maybe that's better.
Yes, you can do both anyway. If you would like to share now. But anyway, let me just.
I can put it in the chat.
Oh, that would be great. I'll just grab everything necessary from the chat and I'll put in an email for the post-webinar email to everybody again, because I like bothering people by emails, just because of that. But thank you very much, Shirali, Melantuna, and Vanessa, for like a very laboriously enjoyable session today. But I would like to wrap up for everyone. You might see already in your chat. I'm just going to share the screen because this will make it clearer for you. So please find the link in your chat box the link to the certificate of participation. Yes, we have the second certificate for you in case you already get your first in the online course. That is your first one. So in our challenge, our campaign this time, we're giving 3 certificates altogether because we're so generous. The first one you already got from your online course. The second one is this one, the certificate of participation for this particular webinar. And the third one that you would get is the one that once you send us the lesson plan, we have reviewed it. We think that it is very good, it is very relevant, and we're going to offer you the third certificate of achievement. So if you want to send us your lesson plan, please wait until you get the email from us sending you the certificate of participation of this webinar. And in that email, there is a link to another form that you can fill, and you can upload your lesson plan into that form. You can upload up to 5 files. For example, you have more than 1 lesson plan, you can upload them all in that particular form and send to us. For some of the countries who cannot access the Google facilities, please email me, like for some countries that do not have the VPN for Google, because we're using Google service, unfortunately, for this time. Please email me and I will send you the PDF version of the form to fill, and everything will be communicated by email for you. And of course, you can rewatch our lovely webinar today. We're making a special thing for you since you request. We will send you a link to the recorded video in our post-webinar email that will be sent to you by Monday. Just give me some time, along with some of the answers to some of the questions you have posed, and links to some of the materials that Shirali and Manantuna want to share with you as well in that particular one email, the post-webinar email on Monday. And just to inform you again, but not necessarily that you have to attend the second time, but if you enjoy, if you like us so much, you can just come to see us again. We have an exactly repeating seminar just like this on the 1st of December. So if you have other teacher friends who you would like to them to take the course, or they are still taking the course and they haven't finished, and they want to have this informative session again, you can tell them to come on the 1st of December. We will send you the link to register that in the post-webinar email, in that particular same email as well. Please help us spread the word to your other colleagues and like growing this community of people doing the living heritage, integrating living heritage in the education. So thank you very much. I have a hand raised from Vanessa. That's surprising.
Yes, just to say, it will be the same. Just to say that the 1st December will be webinar will be not exactly the same, actually, because we will have different examples and different case studies.
Exactly. Not exactly the same. Sorry, wrong word choice. It's going to be majorly in the context of Central Asia and East Asia as well. So for people from Korea, from China, from Japan, and from the Central Asian countries, that's also very like contextualized materials for you.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. It was lovely to have you here.
Thank you very much.
And sorry if we didn't answer all your questions. It was going too fast in the chat. Sorry. You can ask them again on the 1st of December.
Yes. I will try to post you, like, since I've got a lot of thank yous, I'm posting the link again. Please click on the link before you leave this room so you can fill in your information to get your certificate. Please don't leave without clicking that form. Please click the form before you leave, okay? And once you fill it, you can leave the meeting so you get our lovely, lovely design certificate. Thank you very much, everyone. So, okay. So without further ado, Vanessa, Shirali, and Manantuna, would you like to say something as a closing for this webinar?
Thank you very much for all your active questions, even if some of them were a bit difficult. We hope we answered them. And really good luck with the completion of this MOOC, and we hope that you will be able to continue your activities we'll be in touch if you need.
Thank you. Yes, please click on the form before you leave. Please click on the form. Thank you.
I just wanted to share that.
Ma'am, please, I have a question.
Yes.
How can I get the online course completion certificate from UNESCO? The first one.
It's actually in the course itself. Once you finish all the quizzes in the online course, it's going to be a button popping up in that page, which leads you to the certificate. So once you finish the quizzes, you will see the button.
Okay, actually, I am go through the courses till now, and how long? Actually, the deadline.
There is no deadline.
Deadline,
you can continue doing it at your own time. Yes.
Okay. And after submitting the quiz questions and with answer, then it will send it through my email.
The button will appear for you to, like for the first one, the button will appear, and I believe you can download your certificate from that website.
After completion the course and quiz sheets.
Yes.
How can we get the first one? I go through the courses, most of the module 1 to 5.
Vanessa, would you like to clarify how to
actually
get the certificate?
Yes.
The
first one.
The first one is the one from the online course. So that's what LK was explaining. You go through all the steps, you watch all the videos, you do all the quiz, and then at the end you will have access to, it will be issued automatically by the platform.
Okay. Is there any deadline for completion of that course?
No, there is no deadline.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. And if I face any difficulties, then I will contact with you through email.
Definitely. You can always email me.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
So I believe that everybody click on the form. So we would like to, Manantuna, would you like to say something before I close the session?
Thank you. And maybe Manan wants to say something, because I mean, it's such a pleasure to share the work, but I wish there was, I mean, I'm leaving with a sense that I've heard more about your work, and I'm really sorry that we missed out on that. So that's all I wanted. But Manan, did you want to say anything?
Even while listening to or seeing what people were sharing in the chat, I think I learned a lot somehow, like how people were using it in their community, and that was wonderful to hear and see. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. So I will just keep answering to some of the housekeeping question, but thank you very much, everyone, for all the very good comments and very good contributions, both in the chat and in person, like opening mic and all. Thank you very much, our expert, Vanessa Achilles, Manantuna Jaipo, Shirale Bajrashaya. So thank you for all the expertise shared today from the participants on the floor. Like everybody seems to have like quite a very good experience as the teachers, as educators, as course developers, and even as executives of schools. We really appreciate your presence today, and we do hope to hear more from you either by email or seeing you again on the second webinar. Or keep in touch, like you sharing us some of the materials, some of the work progress and lesson plans that you have been doing. And we would like to see a lot of potentials of how UNESCO in different countries, UNESCO field offices would be able to help you achieving this particular mandate of integrating living heritage to the formal education in the future. So thank you very much. This is going to be quite an informal goodbye for all of you, and we don't want to say goodbye, we just want to say keep in touch. And thank you. Have a good night, good evening. in some part of the world, good morning. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.